The Ninja Academy, nestled beneath the towering Hokage rock, was alive with energy as another enrollment season commenced. The grounds were bustling, filled with chatter and excitement. Shimura Danzo, known as the Shadow of the Shinobi and the head of the Shimura clan, was not one for lively gatherings. Typically, he would avoid such events altogether. However, this year marked an exception. For the first time in the clan's history, a prodigy of unparalleled talent had emerged. Today, this extraordinary individual was set to join the academy. Danzo had deemed it necessary to attend. In Danzo's opinion, such a rare talent shouldn't waste time in a conventional ninja school. Instead, this individual should undergo rigorous training in the elite Umbu division to become the clan's ultimate weapon. Danzo envisioned using this genius to achieve his long-standing goal of claiming the Hokage title, or at least positioning someone he controlled to do so. If not for the insistence of the clan elders, Danzo would never have allowed this exceptional talent to step into the academy. Shimura Kizaru. Uchiha Inabi. The instructors called out names, drawing Danzo's attention back to the practice field. A tall boy, unusually mature in stature for his age, stood out. At just 6 years old, he was already nearly 1.7 meters tall. Clad in a striking yellow outfit and wearing tea-tinted glasses, his presence was impossible to ignore. The sight of this boy, Kizaru, caused a stir among the gathered parents, elders, and instructors. Whispers and astonished remarks filled the air. Is that child really 6 years old? This question echoed in the minds of nearly everyone present. Standing nearby, the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, took a thoughtful puff of his pipe, glancing sideways at Danzo. Before Hiruzen could speak, Danzo cut him off with a cold statement. He's 6. The bloodline test confirmed it. He's my younger brother's child. Caught off guard, Hiruzen coughed awkwardly, smoke escaping his mouth and nose. Danzo, clearly irritated, subtly moved away from his old friend's cloud of smoke. On the training ground, a Chunin instructor prepared to oversee a match between Kizaru and Inabi, a member of the Uchiha clan. So, you're the famous Shimura Kizaru, Inabi sneered, looking down his nose at the taller boy. I'll show you that a so-called genius is nothing compared to an Uchiha. Kizaru removed a hand from his pocket, scratching his head nonchalantly. A faint smile graced his lips as he regarded the arrogant Uchiha. Though outwardly calm, his mind wandered briefly. Born into this world as a transmigrator, Kizaru's true identity was Li Yuan. His past life had been ordinary, marked by a relentless pursuit of stability and simplicity. However, that life was cut short, and he found himself reincarnated into the Naruto world. To his surprise, he had been gifted with a unique power, the abilities of a character from his previous life's fiction, modeled after the Admiral Kizaru. Despite having this incredible gift, it required effort to unlock its full potential. The compatibility between himself and the character's abilities increased through rigorous training and by adopting Kizaru's relaxed yet formidable style. An Uchiha, huh? How scary, Kizaru finally remarked, his tone laced with mock sincerity. Inabi flushed with anger. I'll make you eat those words. The young Uchiha charged forward, his fist aimed directly at Kizaru's upper body. Calmly, Kizaru sidestepped the attack with minimal movement, his hands still casually tucked in his pockets. Oh my, that was close, he muttered, his voice tinged with amusement. Inabi's frustration mounted. He adjusted his stance and unleashed a swift kick aimed at Kizaru's waist. Again, Kizaru evaded effortlessly, twisting his body slightly to the left. How terrifying, he murmured, his tone unchanging. Enraged, Inabi threw caution to the wind. Planting his feet firmly, he leaped high into the air, intending to strike Kizaru from above. This time, Kizaru moved. Taking a half step forward, he avoided the attack entirely. So frightening, he said, his words fueling Inabi's fury further. The young Uchiha landed, quickly retreating to create some distance. But Kizaru, in a display of unmatched speed, blurred into motion. In an instant, he closed the gap, appearing directly before his opponent. You know, he said with a serene smile, speed is power. Inabi froze, unable to react. The next moment, Kizaru's powerful kick sent him flying across the training ground. He crashed to the ground with a resounding thud, stirring a cloud of dust. Silence enveloped the field. The spectators, from instructors to parents, were stunned by Kizaru's incredible display of speed and strength. Even seasoned jonin would have struggled to match such prowess. On the observation platform, Danzo's lips curled into a rare, satisfied smile. Beside him, Hiruzen raised an eyebrow, glancing at his old friend. "Your nephew, quite the talent," Hiruzen remarked, his tone light. Danzo, ever stoic, replied coldly, "He's still lacking." Hiruzen turned his gaze back to the field, memories of his own youth stirring in his mind. For a moment, he pondered the weight of nurturing such talent and the potential challenges it might bring to the village's future. Character card. Name, Admiral of Light, inspired by Kizaru from One Piece, fusion level, 9%. In the depths of Kizaru's mind, a surreal, three-dimensional representation of a character card floated, grotesque yet mesmerizing. This was the mysterious system he had awakened after being transported into the world of shinobi. To expedite the fusion of abilities, he had even gone as far as altering his own name from Shimura Morishin to Shimura Kizaru. Such a drastic step, if taken by an ordinary clan member, would have been deemed unacceptable and met with severe consequences under the clan's laws. However, exceptions are often made for extraordinary individuals. As the clan's rising star, Kizaru was given leeway, his exceptional talent earning him privileges that no ordinary member could dream of. "As long as the family name remains Shimura," had been the exact words of the three elders who governed the clan. Kizaru's capabilities far exceeded the bounds of genius. He was regarded as nothing short of monstrous by his own kin. While others viewed his distant relative Danzo as an aging relic, Kizaru was seen as the family's most valuable investment, a prodigy who could bring unparalleled honor to their name. Danzo had tried on numerous occasions to recruit Kizaru into his shadowy faction, the Root, but even with his authority, he couldn't override the unanimous decision of the elders to protect Kizaru's independence. The prodigy's rise. The recent selection process at the Ninja Academy had concluded, and Kizaru's extraordinary abilities had stolen the spotlight. Beside him, the talents of others, including prodigies like Namikaze Minato and the heirs of prestigious clans such as the Inyazuka, Abarame, and Hyuga, faded into insignificance. Kizaru's demonstration of strength and skill was so overwhelming that the village's attention was fixated entirely on him. The Shimura clan was overjoyed. They had produced a talent whose potential rivaled the legends of the first Hokage. His name began spreading through the village, leaving whispers of admiration and astonishment in his wake. During this time, Kizaru's fusion rate had been stagnating at 9% for several months. However, after a critical milestone reaching a 10% fusion rate, an accelerated transformation began. In less than a day, the rate surged forward, unlocking a new facet of his abilities. In the tranquil courtyard of his Shimura residence, Kizaru sat on a tatami mat, savoring a cup of freshly brewed tea. As he placed the cup down, a sly smile crossed his face. The surge to 10% had not only enhanced his physical prowess but had also bestowed upon him a unique and coveted power. The power of light. Raising his hand, Kizaru extended his index finger. A radiant golden light emanated from its tip, rapidly condensing into a laser. With a calm flick, he unleashed the concentrated energy. Boom. The meticulously designed rock garden outside his house disintegrated into rubble, scattering debris across the courtyard. The sudden explosion startled many members of the clan, prompting the swift arrival of a high-ranking guard, Shimura Ishine, using the body flicker technique. "Young Master Kizaru, is everything all right?" Ishine asked cautiously, his gaze shifting from the ruined garden to Kizaru. Before Kizaru could respond, a group of individuals entered the courtyard. Among them were the three clan elders and Danzo, who happened to be visiting the family estate. Their eyes immediately fell on the devastation. "What happened here?" Danzo demanded, his voice sharp with suspicion. Ishine, uncertain of how to explain, simply gestured toward Kizaru. Realizing he had become the center of attention, Kizaru sighed theatrically. "Such a hassle," he muttered before stepping forward. "It's nothing to worry about. I was simply testing something." Extending his finger again, he repeated the earlier demonstration. A concentrated beam of light shot out, creating a new crater in the courtyard. The gathered elders and Danzo watched in stunned silence, their expressions ranging from disbelief to barely contained excitement. "A hidden lineage? Is this a ninjutsu technique you've invented?" asked the first elder, his voice trembling with anticipation. Kizaru's lips curled into a half-smile. "No, I'd describe it more as a Kekkei Genkai, a bloodline limit." The elder's face lit up with unrestrained joy. He stepped forward, grasping Kizaru's hand tightly. "When did you first notice this ability?" Around the time I sparred with that Uchiha prodigy, Kizaru replied nonchalantly. Danzo's expression darkened, his mind already formulating plans to gather more intelligence on the Uchiha. Meanwhile, the other elders exchanged triumphant glances. Our family records do mention an ancient bloodline limit known as light release, the first elder declared, his tone brimming with pride. The other elders eagerly nodded, reinforcing the claim. Kizaru observed their exaggerated enthusiasm with mild amusement. He understood that framing his newfound powers as an ancient family legacy was a protective measure both for him and the clan. By aligning his abilities with their heritage, the elders could shield him from external scrutiny and unwanted attention. In a secluded chamber within the Shimura clan's compound, Danzo, the clan's leader, occupied the seat of authority at the center. To his left sat the esteemed Grand Elder, while Kizaru sat to his right. Contrasting Danzo's stern demeanor, the Grand Elder maintained a warm, contented expression, savoring a steaming cup of tea while eyeing Kizaru with visible pride. To the Grand Elder, Kizaru was a once-in-a-generation prodigy, a marvel whose potential surpassed ordinary expectations. Kizaru's immense reserves of energy, likened to a tailed beast's chakra, were already remarkable, but his recent awakening of a unique ability took things to a whole new level. The Grand Elder's gaze lingered on Kizaru, scrutinizing his features with evident admiration. Quietly, he began contemplating the potential for arranging advantageous unions for the 6-year-old, estimating that within a few years, Kizaru would be ready to strengthen the clan's bloodline further. Uncomfortable under the elder's discerning eyes, Kizaru stretched his legs and leaned back, directing his attention to Danzo's stoic expression. The clan has resolved to arrange your early graduation after 3 years at the academy, Danzo stated in an even tone. 3 years. Kizaru raised an eyebrow in mild surprise. Kizaru had originally intended to spend the full 6 years at the academy, relishing the relatively carefree lifestyle that came with it. The academy's curriculum won't contribute much to your growth, Danzo explained. Your enrollment is primarily to gain visibility and establish a reputation. 3 years is sufficient for that purpose. How inconvenient, Kizaru muttered under his breath. Watch your tone, Danzo reprimanded, his expression hardening. A chuckle from the Grand Elder diffused the tension. Kizaru, it's best to keep your newly awakened ability under wraps for now, he advised with a grandfatherly tone. Understood, Kizaru replied, choosing not to question the reasoning behind the directive. Your performance during the Academy's entrance exam has already made waves, the Grand Elder continued, smiling proudly. However, it's important not to reveal too much, too soon. Gradually unveiling your talents will have a stronger impact and spare you unnecessary scrutiny. The Grand Elder's words, though lengthy, were meant to ensure Kizaru understood the long-term vision and careful planning involved. The decision to limit your academy time to 3 years was not made lightly, Danzo added. Our expectations for you go beyond simply becoming a strong shinobi or even Hokage. We believe you can achieve and surpass the legacy of the first Hokage himself. Both Danzo and the Grand Elder regarded Kizaru with solemn expressions, emphasizing the weight of their ambitions for him. To solidify your reputation, we've devised a plan for the next 3 years of your schooling, Danzo explained. Each year will showcase a significant milestone in your progress. Danzo elaborated further, initially, we intended for you to master an advanced wind release technique by the end of this year. However, with your recent awakening, we'll have you demonstrate your bloodline ability during the finals instead. The thought of showcasing Kizaru's abilities brought a flicker of satisfaction to Danzo's otherwise stoic face. He couldn't help but anticipate the reactions of Kanava's elite when Kizaru's talents became evident. Next year, we'll train you in an S-rank wind release technique, and by your final year, you'll challenge a Jonin directly to earn your graduation, Danzo concluded. Kizaru, unfazed by the rigorous expectations, simply nodded. Don't feel pressured, the Grand Elder reassured him. Your abilities already far exceed what is required. We have complete faith in you. The expectations aren't burdensome, Kizaru responded nonchalantly. Hearing this, both Danzo and the Grand Elder exchanged pleased smiles. A true prodigy should have such confidence, the Grand Elder remarked, pride evident in his tone. Returning to his room after the meeting, Kizaru prepared a cup of tea for himself. Finally, he had a moment to explore the abilities of the mysterious fruit he had acquired earlier. Kizaru began by experimenting with the fruit's most fundamental property, elemental transformation. Raising his hand, he focused on his forearm, transforming it into pure, radiant energy. His fingers passed through the light effortlessly, confirming his newfound power. Next, Kizaru practiced shifting his entire body into energy form. His first few attempts were clumsy, and he nearly collided with the wall. However, after repeated trials, he mastered the technique, effortlessly transitioning between positions with precision. Satisfied with his progress, Kizaru sipped his tea while pondering his training priorities. Given his unique circumstances, traditional taijutsu and ninjutsu seemed less valuable to him. Instead, Kizaru decided to focus on three key areas: illusions, sealing arts, and senjutsu. Illusions, or genjutsu, intrigued him. While he didn't plan to specialize in it, he wanted to develop a strong understanding to avoid being caught off guard. Sealing techniques, with their versatility and immense potential, were another area of interest. As a member of a powerful clan and with access to vast resources, Kizaru believed he could unlock incredible possibilities in this domain. Finally, there was senjutsu. Not only did it offer immense power, but it also promised longevity, a benefit Kizaru found particularly appealing. Reflecting on the sages of old who drew power from nature, Kizaru wondered if humans could develop their own unique methods of harnessing natural energy. It was an idea that excited him and one he was determined to explore further. Among the Shimura clan's newly enrolled students at the academy this year, aside from Kizaru, there were 3 other promising young members. These children were carefully chosen by the family for their talent and potential. They were Shimura Renji, Shimura Akiyako, and Shimura Hana, 2 boys and a girl. Akiyako, notably, was the grandson of the clan's 3rd elder. The Shimura clan was considered a second-tier ninja family in the village, standing on equal footing with the Sarutobi clan. At its peak, the clan boasted over 800 members and nearly 200 shinobi, including an impressive number of jounin and elite jounin. However, the establishment of Root under Danzo's leadership led to significant sacrifices. Over a decade, the clan's numbers dwindled, with their shinobi population halved, leaving only about 100 active ninja. These sacrifices, though costly, also secured substantial gains for the clan. With Danzo's influence solidified in the village and his control over Root, the Shimura clan's stature grew. They expanded their holdings and business ventures within the Land of Fire and gained access to valuable ninja techniques, including forbidden ones. Although the clan now faced a period of recovery, their recent accomplishments laid a foundation for future strength. Time and strategic development were crucial for the clan to convert their recent achievements into lasting power. Kizaru's emergence was a beacon of hope for the Shimura family. His potential promised to safeguard their gains and secure their future dominance. As a result, the clan spared no effort in nurturing him, providing unparalleled care and resources. Within the clan, Kizaru was held in the highest regard, and parents frequently reminded their children of his significance. Kizaru is the future leader of our clan. Treat him with respect and never cross him. This sentiment was a common refrain within the Shimura household. For many, Kizaru represented the ideal child, a source of admiration and inspiration. His peers within the clan viewed him with awe, and many sought to emulate him. Renji, Akiyako, and Hana were particularly excited about becoming his classmates. Akiyako, proud of his connection to Kizaru, couldn't hide his excitement. "Haha. I'm in the same class as my amazing elder brother," he declared, hands on his hips, basking in the envy of his friends. Hana, however, was less enthused by Akiyako's boasting. With her determined expression and bold demeanor, she couldn't resist scoffing. "Tch," she muttered, clearly unimpressed. Though Hana greatly admired Kizaru, their shared experiences losing parents to Root missions and being raised by the clan fostered a sense of rivalry within her. She had hoped to join the elite class alongside him but fell short due to a mistake during the entrance exam, leaving her disappointed. "Are you jealous, Hana?" Akiyako teased, sensing her frustration. "That's what happens when you slack off and hang around big brother Kizaru too much. You're just lazy, and this is your result." Hana's eyes flared with anger. "You jerk. Just wait until the year-end exams. I'll take back that elite class spot from you." Akiyako smirked, clearly enjoying her irritation. "We'll see about that." Renji, the most level-headed of the group, stepped in to mediate. "Come on, you two. There's no need to fight," he said, trying to calm them down. But their bickering continued until Kizaru himself arrived. He overheard their quarrel and immediately stepped in, his presence commanding their attention. "What's all this commotion?" Kizaru asked, his tone light but firm. He approached the group and placed a hand on the head of Shiro, a younger member known for his mischief. "Shiro, stirring up trouble again," Kizaru teased, ruffling the boy's hair playfully. Shiro's cheeks reddened as he pushed Kizaru's hand away. "I'm not a kid anymore," he protested, though his admiration for Kizaru was evident. Kizaru chuckled, tapping Shiro's forehead lightly. All right," he said, before turning to the others. "Renji, Akiyako, Hana, are you ready? It's time to head to the academy." "Yes, big brother Kizaru," they replied in unison, their excitement evident as they followed him with pride. Their small group made their way to the academy, drawing admiring glances from their peers. Kizaru, with his natural leadership and kind demeanor, had earned the trust and loyalty of those around him. From a young age, he had taken it upon himself to care for his younger clan members, playing with them and offering guidance. His efforts had endeared him to the clan, solidifying his role as a beloved figure among the Shimura children. As they walked, Shiro looked up at Kizaru, his eyes filled with admiration. "Big brother Kizaru, you're going to be the strongest ninja ever. I just know it." Kizaru smiled warmly. "That's the plan," he replied confidently, leading his young companions toward their bright futures. On the schoolyard, the 175-centimeter-tall Kizaru stood at the end of the freshman line, towering over his peers. On a raised platform overlooking the grounds, the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, addressed the incoming students with a ceremonial speech. From a distance, Kizaru observed the Hokage's lengthy, fire and leaf-themed address, which lasted close to half an hour. He couldn't help but notice how certain aspects of this world bore a striking resemblance to his previous life. One such similarity was the rhetoric of authority figures' endless drivel designed to inspire, indoctrinate, and drone on for far too long. After nearly 40 minutes, amidst a round of exaggerated applause and expressions of awe, the third Hokage concluded his speech and departed, clearly satisfied with the effect he believed he had achieved. With his departure, the induction ceremony proceeded at an accelerated pace. Within 10 minutes, the opening event wrapped up, and teachers began leading their respective groups of new students to their classrooms. The Ninja Academy's seating arrangements were relaxed, allowing students to choose freely. Considering his classmates, Kizaru, being the tallest among them, opted for a seat by the window at the back of the room. The seat next to him remained vacant. Despite his friend Yoshihiko's eagerness to sit beside him, Kizaru politely urged him to choose a front row spot, citing his focus on studying. Given Kizaru's overwhelming performance during the entrance exams, no other students dared to take the seat next to him. However, in the row directly in front of Kizaru sat members of the prominent Nara, Yamanaka, and Akemichi clans. Nara Shikaku, seated by the window, was closest to him. The Shimura family, to which Kizaru belonged, had historically maintained good relations with the Yamanaka clan. This bond was further strengthened when the Yamanaka provided support during the establishment of the clandestine root division. As a gesture of goodwill, Yamanaka Inoichi, son of the Yamanaka clan leader, turned around to greet Kizaru with polite words, which Kizaru reciprocated with a cordial smile, laying the groundwork for a friendly connection. But not everyone showed kindness. Members of the Uchiha and Hyuga clans, two of the village's most prominent bloodline families, harbored animosity toward Kizaru. Among them, Uchiha Inabi and Hyuga Toda, who had been defeated by Kizaru in the entrance exams, regarded him with a mixture of irritation and determination. Both clans, having long been rivals, shared a deep-seated sense of pride. Losing to someone outside their clans, particularly someone as young as Kizaru, was a bitter pill to swallow. Their resentment, however, wasn't deep. It was more a reflection of their bruised egos and newfound resolve to surpass him. The first day of classes felt oddly reminiscent of Kizaru's experiences from another lifetime. Much of the day was spent on introductions, rules, and lessons on ethics, with little in the way of meaningful instruction. The homeroom teacher, Yamakawa Kiyoshi, was a former Umbu operative who had transitioned to teaching after starting a family. Kiyoshi, a conscientious educator, tried to liven up his lectures on rules and values by incorporating stories from his past missions. This approach, blending dry material with engaging anecdotes, captured most students' attention. They listened intently, their eyes reflecting genuine interest, much to Kiyoshi's satisfaction. His enthusiasm, however, waned when his gaze landed at the back of the room by the window. Snap! The chalk in Kiyoshi's hand broke as he involuntarily tightened his grip. Two students at the back of the room were fast asleep, their heads resting on their desks. Suppressing his frustration, Kiyoshi resolved to assert his authority early on. He recognized both students immediately: Kizaru, the prodigy who had dominated the physical entrance exam, and Shikaku, who had aced the academic portion. Kiyoshi knew that confronting Kizaru directly was unwise. Though confident he could subdue the boy in an outright fight, doing so would likely require exhausting effort and damage his authority in front of the entire class. Instead, he opted for a subtler approach. Picking up the broken piece of chalk, Kiyoshi hurled it with precise aim, hitting Shikaku squarely on the head. The sharp motion caught the attention of the entire class, who turned to watch. Ha ha ha. Shikaku, rubbing his head, rose with a groggy expression, eliciting laughter from his classmates. Sitting in the front row, Yoshihiko joined in the laughter until he realized something. Behind Shikaku sat Kizaru, still fast asleep. Big brother Kizaru must have been training too hard last night, Yoshihiko rationalized silently. Shikaku, stand at the back of the room and make sure Kizaru wakes up. Kiyoshi commanded, raising his voice to assert control. How troublesome, Shikaku muttered as he stood, rubbing his head. He glanced at Kizaru, who was leaning back in his chair with a faint smile. In that moment, Shikaku understood the situation. The teacher was using him to set an example for Kizaru. Grumbling inwardly about the teacher's methods, Shikaku moved to the back of the room, standing near Kizaru's left. Big brother Kazuki, were you too tired from yesterday's training? Today really startled me, brother Kazuki. Oh, by the way, brother Kazuki. I wrote down everything that happened today. Would you like to see it? Walking home with the three lively siblings from the Shimura family, the chatty Shintaro stayed glued to Kazuki's side, his words flowing like an endless stream. Kazuki responded with brief replies, quickening his pace as they made their way back to the Shimura clan residence. You all go ahead. I need to meet with the clan leader, Kazuki announced as he pushed open the gate and stepped into the main courtyard. But big brother Kazuki, Shintaro began to protest, only to be pulled away by Shinobu and Yuki. Goodbye, brother Kazuki. The two smiled warmly, one tugging on Shintaro while the other waved cheerfully toward Kazuki. Goodbye. Watching the trio walk away, Kazuki let out a small sigh of relief, casually scratching his ear with his pinky finger. With his hands now tucked into his pockets, he headed toward the courtyard where Danzo resided. His visit to Danzo wasn't just an excuse to escape Shintaro's endless chatter. Danzo had summoned him. The lessons at the Ninja Academy were too basic and didn't provide much challenge for Kazuki. Danzo, recognizing this, had insisted that Kazuki join him for advanced training every day after school. Kazuki didn't mind. He understood that in this world, power dictated everything, whether in the clan, the village, or beyond. Strength was the foundation of privileges and respect. Danzo's residence stood at the center of the Shimura estate, a short distance from the main gate. As Kazuki stepped through the wooden entrance, he found Danzo standing alone in the courtyard, waiting for him. I hope I'm not late, clan leader Danzo. Kazuki greeted with a cheerful smile. Danzo's stern gaze briefly shifted. He had often criticized Kazuki's carefree attitude, but no amount of reprimands seemed to change it. Without commenting on the boy's demeanor, Danzo turned and motioned for Kazuki to follow him into the house. Come with me. Once inside, they sat across from each other at a tea table. Danzo broke the silence. I heard from Miss Hein that you were dozing off in class today. Kazuki smirked, scratching his head sheepishly. Uncle Hein sure loves to report everything. It didn't surprise Kazuki that Danzo knew about his day-to-day activities. The clan had assigned a high-ranking ninja to shadow him in secret, and Kazuki had long since noticed. Danzo, surprisingly, didn't scold him. Those classes aren't worth your attention. It's fine if you use them to rest. Kazuki blinked in surprise. Danzo was usually quick to nitpick over such things. Don't look so shocked. Those lessons are designed for the masses, not for someone like you. You're different, Kazuki. You have the potential to shape the entire ninja world, much like the first Hokage. You were born to lead, to stand above others, Danzo said, his voice firm and deliberate. Being a leader sounds exhausting, Kazuki replied with a grin. I'd rather find a simple, well-paying job that lets me enjoy life and peace. Danzo chuckled, unbothered by Kazuki's response. Isn't being the Hokage exactly that kind of role? Kazuki shrugged. Didn't seem like it to me. Danzo laughed. Hiruzen certainly thinks so. He probably spends most of his time hiding in his office, watching people through his crystal ball. Kazuki burst out laughing. Oh, I'm definitely telling him you said that, clan leader. Feel free, Danzo said with a sly grin. While you're at it, ask him how much he earns as Hokage. The two shared a laugh, though Danzo's expression soon grew serious again. Listen, Kazuki. Troubles will always find their way to you, no matter how much you try to avoid them. That's why you need power, the kind that lets you delegate those problems to others. So you want me to aim for the Hokage position, huh? Kazuki asked. It's not about aiming for it, Danzo said with conviction. It's your destiny. One day, the title of Hokage will be yours, my promise to you. For the first time, Kazuki saw a glimmer of ambition in Danzo's eyes. He wasn't afraid of it, instead, he found it oddly reassuring. While he knew Danzo's goodwill came with its own share of ulterior motives, Kazuki also understood that pure altruism was a rare thing in the world. All right, then, Kazuki said with a grin. I, Kazuki, will become the Hokage one day. Although, he added with a mischievous smirk, how old was Tsunade when she became Hokage? Can I even handle something like that? Satisfied with his answer, Danzo's stern expression softened into a pleased smile. The exchange of ideas wrapped up, leaving Danzo visibly satisfied with Kizaru's reply. With a rare, subtle smile, Danzo raised his right hand, retrieving a scroll from a hidden pocket in his robes. This contains insights on wind release techniques. It also includes 2 relatively straightforward wind-based jutsu. Train with these diligently when you return. As he spoke, Danzo placed the scroll on the table, sliding it toward Kizaru. What type of ninjutsu are we talking about? Kizaru asked, his interest piqued. Pure aim techniques, wind release, gale cutter and wind release, air sphere. Kizaru nodded, pocketing the scroll. In a month, the academy is hosting its first evaluation. I trust you'll. Don't worry about it, Kizaru interjected confidently. I'll come out on top. Danzo, unbothered by the interruption, allowed a pleased expression to linger. All right, off you go. I won't hold you here for dinner. Stretching with an exaggerated yawn, Kizaru stood. All right then. Farewell, clan head. He turned sharply toward the door, his stride casual. Show some respect. Danzo called out with mild reproach, tempered by amusement. We'll talk about it another time, Kizaru quipped without turning, waving lazily over his shoulder as he left. Danzo's smile faded as Kizaru disappeared from view, his face settling into its usual stern and calculating expression. Shifting gears, he returned to the responsibilities of a leader. The long peace after the last war had allowed the major villages to recover and grow stronger. Now, tensions simmered as rival factions vied to challenge Konoha's dominance, eager to carve pieces of strength from the land of fire. Danzo could feel the storm brewing. This was precisely why he had pushed for Kizaru's early graduation. With his exceptional talents and Danzo's guidance, Kizaru was destined to amass merit, prestige, and power in the coming conflict. In the days that followed, Kizaru's routine remained unchanged. His mornings were spent half-heartedly enduring academy lectures, his afternoons training wind release techniques under Danzo, and his nights honing his unique abilities in private. Unlike the Sarutobi clan's focus on blending chakra natures, the Shimura family specialized in refining wind-based ninjutsu. Despite Kizaru possessing affinities for wind, fire, and lightning chakra, Danzo prioritized his wind training. Perhaps due to the unique nature of Kizaru's soul or the qualities of his body, his spiritual energy and chakra reserves were unusually immense, comparable to that of a tailed beast. This extraordinary spiritual energy made Kizaru's control and perception of chakra unparalleled. The 2 wind techniques Danzo provided were fully mastered in a single day. Kizaru's rapid progress left Danzo impressed but also conflicted. Having such an extraordinary student made Danzo, for the first time, understand the frustration of teaching someone who constantly outpaced expectations. As Kizaru mastered the initial techniques, Danzo began introducing more advanced ones, such as wind release, gale barrage and wind release, air bomb. Within weeks, Kizaru had learned all the wind-based jutsu Danzo had spent decades perfecting. In the Shimura clan's training field, Danzo observed as Kizaru performed wind release, gale barrage. From his mouth, Kizaru expelled dozens of razor-sharp air currents, their speed and cutting power enough to reduce wooden targets to splinters. Watching the devastation, Danzo nodded with approval. What had taken him years to perfect, Kizaru achieved in a matter of weeks. Well done, Danzo remarked as he approached. Your wind release proficiency has surpassed the level of an academy graduate. When will you teach me the S-rank techniques you promised? Kizaru inquired eagerly. Danzo's smile turned sly. Haven't I already? When did that happen? By refining the techniques I taught you, you've elevated them. You've created something beyond their original scope. But they're still classified as B rank, Kizaru argued. Not anymore. Rename them. You've transformed these techniques into something worthy of higher ranks. Danzo elaborated, with your modifications, they've become your creations, advanced gale cutter, enhanced air sphere, and so on. These aren't just improvements, they're entirely new techniques. Kizaru shrugged, unconvinced. Call them whatever you like. Titles don't matter to me. Danzo chuckled. Regardless of names, remember this, everything I have, one day, will belong to you. Poof, if you say so. Kizaru turned and began walking away, hands in his pockets. Dinner time. I have business with the rude. You go ahead, Danzo replied, remaining where he stood. Well then, see you later, uncle. Kizaru waved casually. Don't embarrass the Shimura name tomorrow, Danzo called after him. Relax, I've got it handled. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Danzo stood motionless, watching Kizaru disappear into the distance. Don't let me down, Kizaru, he murmured, his voice blending with the quiet twilight. This exam is divided into 3 sections: academic test, physical evaluation, and sparring matches. I expect everyone to give it their all. Announced Kiyoshi, holding a stack of test papers in his hands, his tone firm. Several students exchanged excited glances, particularly Inabi and Toda, who frequently looked toward Kizaru sitting casually at the back of the room. Their intentions were crystal clear. Ever since their defeat by Kizaru in the entrance exam, both had undergone rigorous training with their clan elders, drastically improving their abilities. This newfound confidence made them certain they had surpassed Kizaru, whose relaxed demeanor at school only fueled their assumptions. Near Kizaru, Shikaku sighed heavily, muttering, what a bother. A month of interaction had made Kizaru somewhat close to the future members of the Inoshikacho trio. This familiarity also made them aware of his extraordinary skills. They knew that, despite his seemingly laid-back attitude, Kizaru trained diligently every day after school and had already mastered several advanced wind release techniques. His stellar performance in the entrance exam had drawn the attention of many ninja clans, leading to increased training pressure on their children. What's the point of staying here? You should just apply for early graduation, Shikaku remarked, turning to glance at Kizaru with mock disdain. The atmosphere here is pleasant, the people are entertaining, and the lessons are the perfect mix of boring and relaxing. Much better than being at home, Kizaru replied with a grin, leaning back in his chair. You've got some strange preferences. Shikaku rolled his eyes and slumped back onto his desk. The other students, including Shikaku, couldn't help but feel a sense of resignation. Being in the same generation as someone as talented as Kizaru was nothing short of unfortunate. The academic portion of the exam wasn't particularly challenging. It consisted of a single test paper to be completed in an hour. Kiyoshi handed the stack of papers to 2 of his most diligent students, Minato and Yoshihiko, to distribute among the class. Each student was given a sheet, but Yoshihiko deliberately chose the side where Kizaru sat. Big brother, give it your best. Yoshihiko enthusiastically handed the paper to Kizaru, offering a fist pump for encouragement. You too, Yoshihiko. Kizaru replied with a warm smile. Of course. I won't let you down. Yoshihiko nodded earnestly and returned to his seat. Kizaru glanced at the paper and quickly skimmed through it. The questions were simple enough for him, even with his tendency to daydream during lessons. Pulling a pencil from his desk, he began answering the questions with ease. An hour flew by, and Kiyoshi once again enlisted Minato and Yoshihiko to collect the completed papers. This time, Minato approached Kizaru's desk. The cheerful boy gave Kizaru a friendly smile as he collected the paper. What a bright smile, Kizaru mused to himself as Minato walked away. Hey. That's a boy you're talking about. Shikaku interrupted, raising an eyebrow. I'm just stating the truth. You're the one making it weird, Kizaru retorted. Alright, let's head to the field, Inoichi interjected, cutting through their banter. The students gathered at the playground, which was spacious enough to accommodate the large group. They stood in an irregular circle around Kiyoshi. The physical evaluation has two parts, general fitness and ninja tool usage, Kiyoshi explained. The first test was straightforward running laps. Each student would run 20 laps around the track and their times would be recorded. Everyone, line up at the starting line and wait for my signal. Kiyoshi called out. The students eagerly assembled, some glancing nervously at Kizaru, while others were brimming with determination. Kizaru, this time, I'll definitely beat you. Inabi declared, stepping forward with his head held high, embodying the pride of the Uchiha clan. Kizaru glanced down at him and smirked. You've got something stuck in your teeth. What? Inabi froze, his cheeks reddening as laughter erupted around them. Among the chuckles, Yoshihiko's was the loudest, thoroughly enjoying the moment. Inabi's face flushed deeper, his frustration evident as he shouted, I'll show you during the competition. Looking forward to it. Best of luck. Kizaru replied nonchalantly, walking away to join Shikaku. Trouble follows you everywhere, doesn't it? Shikaku muttered, rubbing his temple as Kizaru approached. What did I do? Kizaru asked innocently. You're driving him insane, that's what. Don't give me so much credit, Kizaru said with a sheepish grin, scratching the back of his head. Unbelievable, Shikaku sighed, shaking his head. As they strolled toward the ninja academy, Hiruzen held his old tobacco pipe in his mouth, with Danzo walking on his right side, matching his pace. Initially immersed in reviewing documents in his office, Hiruzen had been invited by Danzo to observe the first-year students' introductory tests at the academy. Understanding his old friend's intent, Hiruzen knew it was an opportunity to showcase the accomplishments of their clan's younger generation and indulge in some prideful boasting. Arriving near the ninja academy, the two stealthily entered without drawing attention, leaping onto a large tree near the schoolyard. They concealed their presence among the dense foliage. Standing on the sturdy branches, Hiruzen exhaled a puff of smoke, scanning the surroundings. His keen eyes spotted several figures, parents of students and ninja stationed to ensure the young one's safety. This test seems to have drawn quite the crowd, Hiruzen remarked, his tone calm as he glanced at Danzo. Danzo remained silent, nodding slightly while keeping his focus on the activity below. In the schoolyard, the physical test had concluded, and the elite class students stood gathered around Kiyoshi. They were silently recuperating, their breaths still uneven. Among them, Inabi and Toda stood out, each gripping their arms and panting heavily. Their faces were flushed from the exertion, and beads of sweat dripped from their chins onto the ground. Their disheveled state wasn't due to a lack of physical ability but a consequence of their relentless efforts to outpace Kizaru during the running laps. At the test's onset, Kizaru had used his long legs to surge to the front, quickly gaining a lead over the others. Inabi and Toda, unwilling to let Kizaru maintain his dominance, pushed themselves to accelerate and overtake him. However, no matter how hard they tried, Kizaru always stayed just half a meter ahead. Frustrated by their inability to catch up, the two expended all their energy in an attempt to outpace him. Their relentless sprinting disrupted their rhythm, leaving them exhausted by the test's latter half. Ultimately, not only did they fail to surpass Kizaru, but they also lost their spots among the top runners, finishing in the middle of the pack. Damn it! Inabi gasped, his words fragmented, his expression bitter with dissatisfaction. When we spar, I'll definitely defeat that guy. He declared, casting a frustrated glance at Kizaru. You're dreaming if you think you can beat him. Toda retorted disdainfully. Their heated exchange quickly caught the attention of their classmates and instructor. It looks like those two are fighting because of you, Shikaku observed, nudging Kizaru. That's intimidating, Kizaru replied, hands in his pockets and a faint smile on his face. Shikaku shot him a skeptical look. You're terrible at consoling people. Sorry about that, Kizaru said nonchalantly, clearly unbothered. While the boys conversed, Kiyoshi efficiently diffused the tension between Inabi and Toda before announcing the start of the ninja tools proficiency test. Under Kiyoshi's guidance, the students moved to a corner of the field, the designated area for practicing with ninja tools. Stand behind me. When I call your name, step forward and throw your tools. You'll each have 3 chances, and only your best score will count, Kiyoshi instructed, holding a roster. The students obediently lined up behind Kiyoshi, waiting their turn. Namikaze Minato. Kiyoshi called out the first name. Though only a month into the school year, Minato's friendly demeanor and radiant smile had already earned him the admiration of his peers. As he approached the throwing point, several classmates cheered him on. Minato retrieved a wooden shuriken from the academy's supplies and focused intently. His first throw landed in the 6th ring. His second and third attempts each hit the 7th ring, a remarkable performance for someone who had only started training recently. Well done, Minato. Kiyoshi gave him a thumbs up. Thank you, sensei. Minato bowed respectfully before stepping aside. As Kiyoshi continued calling names, most of the elite class students managed to score consistent hits in the 5th or 6th rings. When Toda's turn came, his sharp visual acuity allowed him to hit the 9th ring 3 times in succession, earning applause from the crowd. TCH. Inabe scoffed from the sidelines, clearly unimpressed. What's so great about 9 rings? Watch me score a perfect 10. Inabe declared confidently as his name was called. It wasn't arrogance. Inabe's clan was renowned for their exceptional skill in wielding ninja tools. Sure enough, Inabe delivered on his promise, landing perfect scores with all 3 throws. That was incredible. As expected of the Uchiha clan. The classmates' cheers swelled Inabe's pride even further. You're quite skilled, Inabe, Kiyoshi praised him. I'm just getting started. Inabe laughed, his initial attempt at humility quickly giving way to unabashed pride. With a wry smile, Kiyoshi continued down the roster. Shimura Kizaru. At Kiyoshi's call, the field fell silent. The atmosphere grew heavy with anticipation as everyone turned their attention to Kizaru, the unstoppable force of their class. Even Inabe stopped basking in his success, his expression shifting to one of curiosity and challenge. Kizaru, good luck. He called out, though his tone was more competitive than supportive. Thanks, Kizaru replied casually as he strode to the throwing point. Sensei, if I break the target, do I have to pay for it? He asked with a mischievous grin. Kiyoshi hesitated, taken aback by the unexpected question. After a moment's thought, he shrugged, and said, No, just give it your best shot. In that case, I won't hold back. Kizaru's cryptic smile deepened as he retrieved a wooden shuriken. Instead of holding the shuriken as the other students did, Raiden placed it behind him and then raised it to his mouth. Witnessing Raiden's unusual actions, most of the students wore puzzled expressions. However, a select few, like Hiroshi, began to suspect his intentions. What is this guy up to now? Hiroshi muttered. He had a feeling that Raiden, known for his antics, was planning something outrageous. Among the teachers, Instructor Kenta also sensed something amiss. Combining Raiden's earlier curious question, he suspected the boy was about to pull off something extraordinary. Still, he refrained from intervening, choosing instead to remain on high alert. This move, hidden nearby, a senior observer, Ryoma, clearly saw Raiden's actions and turned to his companion. This kid's creativity knows no bounds, Ryoma remarked. Despite his complaint, a glint of anticipation flickered in his eyes. Raiden infused the shuriken with energy, imbuing it with wind element chakra. The chakra spiraled around the shuriken, which began to spin and accelerate at an alarming rate. As the shuriken's speed increased, Raiden shifted it to his side. The spinning motion generated a transparent, razor-sharp wind blade, extending half a meter around the shuriken. The audience was stunned, their eyes wide with astonishment at the incredible display. This technique, Kenta recognized the move immediately. Wind blade shuriken. That's advanced ninjutsu. Realizing the potential danger, Kenta quickly barked an order, everyone, step back at least 5 meters. Snapped out of their daze, the students hurriedly retreated. Is he really this strong? Murmured Takeshi, one of the students who had underestimated Raiden earlier. His eyes remained glued to the scene as his classmates dragged him further back. Calm and composed, Raiden ensured everyone was at a safe distance before proceeding. With a small flick of his wrist, the wind blade shuriken shot forward toward the target. Boom. The shuriken struck the wooden target, shattering it into countless splinters. It didn't stop there, the spinning blade carved a deep trench into the ground several meters behind the target, sending dust and debris flying into the air. Instructor Kenta wiped sweat from his brow as he surveyed the destruction. He couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease. Was this student's power already beyond his own? For a moment, Kenta questioned whether Raiden truly needed to remain in the academy. Perhaps he had already surpassed the level of instruction they could provide. Unbeknownst to the students, other observers outside the school grounds, including seasoned shinobi, were also monitoring the test. Among them, an elder of the Fuma clan used his heightened perception to evaluate the energy radiating from Raiden. Unbelievable, the elder muttered, impressed by the boy's sheer potential. A genius of this caliber appears only once in a generation. Meanwhile, Ryoma and his companion, Ayato, exchanged glances. This boy's strength is astonishing, Ryoma commented. Ayato, though typically skeptical, couldn't argue. If he continues on this path, he'll surpass even the most elite shinobi. Back on the training field, as the dust settled, Raiden stood casually, a faint smile on his lips. Kenta approached him, his expression a mix of awe and exasperation. Glancing at the ruined target and the gaping trench, he shook his head. Due to the damage caused during this demonstration, Kenta began, pausing to shoot a pointed look at Raiden, who feigned an apologetic smile. The equipment test is temporarily suspended. We'll move on to the next segment, the practical combat test. The announcement was met with half-hearted responses as the students were still processing what they had just witnessed. Everyone, head to the sparring area and prepare yourselves. The test will resume shortly, Kenta instructed. As the group moved, Kenta called out to Raiden. A word, please. Lingering behind, Raiden waited for the others to be out of earshot before addressing his teacher. Yes, instructor, he asked with an innocent expression. Kenta's tone was firm but concerned. Raiden, during the sparring matches, I need you to hold back. No excessive techniques or high-level ninjutsu, understood? Raiden's smile widened slightly. Of course, sir. I'll be careful. Internally, Kenta groaned. Careful? I'll believe it when I see it. Shimura Kazuto, Hyagataro. As Kiyoshi's words echoed through the air, all eyes turned toward Kazuto, who stepped forward from the rear of the crowd. Taro, positioned at the forefront, stood with Kiyoshi not far behind, his gaze focused intently on Kazuto, who now stood before him. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, Taro calmed his mind. Kazuto's earlier display of power made Taro acutely aware of his own limitations. He could sense that this opponent, a true force of nature, was leagues beyond him. Shimura Kazuto, your brilliance is undeniable. Your strength is impressive, but I, Hyagataro, will not concede. I will give my all, using the mightiest taijutsu of the Hyaga clan, to overcome you. Taro clenched his hands at his sides, silently reaffirming his resolve. If Kazuto could hear Taro's thoughts, he would surely have mocked him for claiming to possess the greatest taijutsu in the ninja world, especially when standing before the one who would one day shape the fate of many. Kazuto, I will give everything I have. I trust you'll do the same. Taro stated with conviction, his eyes locking onto Kazuto's. Kazuto, unfazed, observed Taro, now consumed by an overwhelming sense of heroism, and couldn't help but think to himself, are the ninja world's youths really diving into their angsty phases already? Amused by Taro's zealous spirit, Kazuto still refrained from diminishing his enthusiasm. With a calm smile, he nodded, replying, the Hyaga clan's prowess is indeed impressive. Indeed. Taro answered proudly. Kiyoshi, seeing the intensity between them, called out, take your positions. The match is about to begin. Kazuto gave a subtle acknowledgement of Kiyoshi's warning, signaling his readiness. As the teacher's eyes met his, the unspoken message was clear. He'd need to be cautious. With the arena now tense, both walked toward the center, preparing for combat. Go, Taro-kun. A chorus of classmates cheered for Taro, rooting for the underdog. Taro, encouraged by the cheers, steeled himself, pushing any doubts aside as his resolve hardened. Kiyoshi took a deep breath, raising his voice as he shouted, begin. At the sound of the signal, Taro surged forward. Instead of maintaining distance, he aimed to close in immediately on Kazuto, determined that his only hope was to engage in close-quarters combat. Taro had seen Kazuto's ninja tool prowess in their earlier tests, and he knew the only way he stood a chance was by fighting up close, where his taijutsu skills could shine. With Kazuto's previously demonstrated wind-based ninjutsu abilities, Taro believed that physical combat was his best shot. As Taro closed the gap, Kazuto remained still, showing no sign of movement, his hands casually placed in his pockets. The sight of Kazuto's nonchalance ignited a fierce fire in Taro's chest. His Byakugan activated, chakra swirling as he prepared his signature gentle fist technique. Drawing upon his training, Taro struck at Kazuto's midsection with a precise palm strike. "You will regret underestimating me," Taro thought as he watched his palm move toward Kazuto. Kazuto, barely reacting at first, glanced at Taro's attack and calmly shifted his body just enough to avoid the strike by the smallest margin. In the next instant, his right leg shot out, an afterimage following the motion, sending Taro flying through the air. The teacher and students watching gasped in awe. Kazuto's swift, controlled movements had left them stunned. That was incredible. The fluidity of Kazuto's movements, combined with his brutal counter-attack, showed his overwhelming mastery of taijutsu, and his potential was unmistakable. As Taro crashed to the ground, rolling from the force of the blow, Kiyoshi, instinctively ready to call an end to the match, began to speak. However, before Kiyoshi could act, Taro, eyes widening, shouted from the ground, "I'm not finished yet." Bang. Taro's voice was drowned out by the deafening sound of his body slamming against the earth. Though every inch of him ached from the impact, especially the area where Kazuto's kick had landed, Taro pushed through the pain. He sprang up, his pride and determination burning in his chest. "I'm not giving up," he cried. Seeing Taro's determination, Kiyoshi hesitated, then fell silent. Taro, eyes now filled with resolve, turned his gaze back to Kazuto. "You're not done, are you? Give me everything you've got." Taro's roar echoed through the arena as he rushed forward once again. Kazuto, watching this fiery persistence, let out a chuckle, impressed by the boy's spirit. "What a tenacious kid," Kazuto commented. Then, as his hands began to form seals, he warned, "If you can't dodge this, it'll be over." "Kazuto!" Kiyoshi shouted, his voice tight with concern. "Wind release, vacuum great sphere." Kazuto exhaled deeply, gathering wind chakra as the attack formed. A massive sphere of wind, crystal clear and deadly, launched from his mouth, hurtling toward Taro with incredible speed. As Taro closed the distance between them, he froze in shock at the approaching wind sphere. His heart raced, and his mind went blank as he faced an attack unlike anything he had encountered before. "Am I going to die here?" Taro thought, paralyzed with fear. "Move, Taro!" Kiyoshi screamed, rushing toward him. The Hyuga clan's Jonin, watching from afar, immediately darted into the arena with body flicker, faster than the others. Hiruzen and Danzo, too, had already begun moving when Kazuto's hand seals started. Before anyone could act, the wind sphere reached Taro, and Kiyoshi was just moments too late to shield him. "Bow your head." As Toda felt the weight of despair creeping in, a slow, nonchalant voice reached his ears, followed by the sudden appearance of a yellow figure in front of him. Kizaru, anticipating the moment while executing his technique, appeared effortlessly between Toda and Kiyoshi. With a calm and composed smile, Kizaru placed his hands on the heads of both individuals. Facing the massive wind sphere threatening to obliterate everything in its path, Kizaru raised his long leg with grace. Coating it with chakra, he delivered a forceful upward kick, sending the wind sphere soaring into the air like a soccer ball. The sphere rapidly ascended before bursting, transforming into a violent gust that rattled the surroundings. The students in the arena were caught in the wind's force, shielding themselves with their hands and squinting their eyes. "That was terrifying," one of them exclaimed. Despite the ferocious gust sweeping around, Kizaru stood unfazed at the center, hands resting on the students and faculty, his gaze toward the sky with a look of admiration. Such reckless use of ninjutsu, truly alarming. Kiyoshi, his head pressed down, pushed Kizaru's hand away and raised his head, unable to contain his excitement. Still recovering from the shock and unable to fully process the event, Kiyoshi glared at Kizaru, his thoughts full of curses. But as a teacher surrounded by his students, and with the vast power difference between them, Kiyoshi bit back his emotions. Meanwhile, Toda, still stunned and unable to snap out of it, had his head still held down by Kizaru, lost in disbelief. "Rest easy, teacher. As I said, I'm very careful. See? Everyone's fine," Kizaru said with a grin. Taking a deep breath, Kiyoshi reminded himself to stay calm. He was a teacher, in a school, surrounded by students, and he couldn't let his emotions get the best of him. "You're..." Kiyoshi struggled to find the right words, his frustration evident. After a moment of silence, He looked directly at Kizaru and spoke with resolve. Kizaru, you should apply for early graduation. Staying here is a waste of your talent. Teacher, I couldn't bear to leave you and everyone else, Kizaru responded with a mockingly sincere expression. Kiyoshi's cheek twitched several times in response, left speechless. Cough. At that tense moment, a cough broke the silence from nearby. Hokage-sama. Wow. It's the Hokage. Grandpa Hokage is here. Upon hearing the term, Grandpa Hokage, the middle-aged Hiruzen felt a pang of sadness and wanted to light a cigarette. Manners, children, manners. Why can't any of you speak properly? How frustrating. He thought to himself, though his face remained warm and inviting as he approached the children. After patting the heads and shoulders of several students, Hiruzen made his way toward the battlefield. Hokage-sama, I deeply apologize for causing you concern. It was my negligence, and I'm truly sorry. Kiyoshi quickly turned and bowed to Hiruzen. With a gentle smile, Hiruzen placed a comforting hand on Kiyoshi's back. Kiyoshi, please, get up. It's not your fault. You've worked hard too. Moved by the Hokage's words, Kiyoshi struggled to hold back tears. Observing the scene, Kizaru couldn't help but glance at Danzo, who stood nearby, cold and silent. Worry filled his mind about his uncle's lack of political finesse. You deserve to never be Hokage with your attitude. Why make life hard for everyone? Kizaru, are you okay? After soothing Kiyoshi, Hiruzen turned his attention to Kizaru. Responding with a smile, Kizaru reassured him, I'm fine, Hokage-sama. Relaxing at Kizaru's response, Hiruzen's gaze shifted to Toda, who was still under Kizaru's grasp. Toda, are you okay? Snapping out of his stupor, Toda felt embarrassed, realizing he had acted foolishly in front of the Hokage. He tried to respond but found Kizaru still holding his head. Kizaru, let go of me. Toda shouted, flustered. Realizing his mistake, Kizaru quickly released his grip, his face showing genuine remorse. Sorry for scaring you, Toda. Embarrassed and angry, Toda turned red, unsure of how to respond. He chose to ignore Kizaru and focus instead on the Hokage in front of him. Hokage-sama, I'm fine. Hiruzen, using this moment to teach, addressed Toda with a fatherly tone, it's good to be determined, but in the future, think before you act. A good ninja knows when to assess their strengths and weaknesses. I understand, Hokage-sama, Toda murmured, his head lowered in embarrassment. Hiruzen gently patted Toda's head and offered words of encouragement, but your bravery today was commendable. You didn't falter in the face of adversity and kept searching for ways to win. You're a fine child. I have no doubt you'll become a great ninja. All right, that's enough with both the praise and sarcasm, Kizaru muttered inwardly, watching the scene unfold. Despite his inner complaints, Toda, bolstered by the Hokage's praise, raised his head, his eyes gleaming with admiration. From that moment on, Toda became an ardent admirer of the Hokage. After calming the Hyoga child, Hiruzen turned to Kizaru, this remarkably gifted child, and decided to focus on him. Kizaru, given your current abilities, staying in school is a waste. You should apply for early graduation. I'll personally hand you the Konoha Forehead Protector. Hokage-sama, my strength is only marginally better than my classmates, and as a ninja, I still have many shortcomings. I wish to continue my studies, Kizaru refused, sensing the Hokage's subtle push for him to leave school and join the ranks of ninjas. Making a 6-year-old a full-fledged ninja and sending him into missions or to battle felt wrong to Kizaru. He wanted to speak more, but upon seeing the envious looks of the other students, he decided there was no point in continuing the discussion. The original goal of the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama, when establishing Konohagakure, was to create a peaceful environment where children wouldn't have to take up arms at such a young age but instead could enjoy a carefree childhood. But today, a child graduating and becoming a shinobi at 6 or 7 years old was viewed as an incredible achievement, garnering the respect and admiration of the entire village. Hiruzen's decision to offer early graduation to Kizaru from the Shimura clan made him the talk of the town. His classmates, their families, and the various clans couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration and even jealousy toward the young prodigy. When news of Kizaru's prowess spread, it didn't take long for the entire village to learn that he not only excelled in physical feats but also displayed an exceptional mastery of ninjutsu. Before long, the Shimura clan became the center of attention. Leaders from other clans began making visits, seeking favor. The Shimura clan, with its current influential figure in Danzo, the founding leader of the Umbu, and now with the addition of such a gifted heir like Kizaru, was destined for greatness. Seeing this, the Yamanaka and Abarame clans, already allies of the Shimura clan, took it a step further by sending their best ninjas to join the route, further strengthening the organization. For Danzo, the mastermind behind the Umbu, though he outwardly kept his calm, inside he was filled with pride and joy. Danzo had a special attachment to Kizaru. To enhance Kizaru's reputation, Danzo made sure that rumors about Kizaru's groundbreaking ninjutsu spread far and wide. It was said that at the tender age of 6, Kizaru had developed advanced techniques like wind release super vacuum wave and wind release super vacuum sphere, as well as the even more powerful super vacuum serial wave and super vacuum great sphere. The rumors spread like wildfire, and soon Kizaru became the talk of the village, with everyone praising his extraordinary abilities. However, when the third Hokage, Hiruzen, learned of Kizaru's feats, he couldn't help but feel conflicted. It wasn't that he didn't appreciate such talent within the Shimura clan, it was the fact that these techniques were originally modified by Danzo. Years ago, when Danzo had improved these ninjutsu, their teacher, the second Hokage Senja Tobirama, had lent his guidance, with Hiruzen himself offering input. As he sat in his office, smoking his pipe, Hiruzen reflected on the situation. While Danzo's clan flourished with exceptional talents, Hiruzen felt a twinge of regret about his own clan, the Sarutobis, which seemed to lack such promising heirs. Perhaps I need to work harder, Hiruzen mused, rubbing his aching back. He resolved to focus on nurturing a worthy successor, despite the challenges ahead. But while Hiruzen was coming to terms with his own clan's situation, Danzo found himself facing a dilemma. Kizaru, the young genius, had no desire to follow the Hokage's request to graduate early. It wasn't that Kizaru was ungrateful or rebellious, he simply had other plans. Despite all the pressure from the village and the looming expectations, he didn't want to rush things. He wanted to continue his studies and enjoy the academy life a little longer. Danzo, ever the strategist, was at a loss. Public opinion was already building up, and it was clear that if Kizaru participated in the early graduation exam and successfully defeated a Jonin, his reputation as a prodigy would be solidified, making him an undeniable future leader of Konoha. Danzo even had grand plans in mind, picturing Kizaru as Hokage one day, uniting the ninja world under Konoha's banner. However, Kizaru's resistance was proving difficult. After much discussion, Danzo proposed a compromise. "How about this?" he said. "You can graduate early, but for the first 2 years, you'll focus solely on training and not take on any missions." Kizaru paused, considering the offer. It was a fair deal. He would gain the prestige of early graduation but still have time to hone his skills. After a moment of thought, Kizaru agreed. "I'll accept, but I have one condition." "What's that?" Danzo asked, intrigued. "Let me finish this school year first, so I can have a complete academic experience," Kizaru replied. Danzo smiled. "That's no problem at all." While the arrangement delayed things a bit, Danzo was pleased to have Kizaru on board. As Kizaru rose to leave, Danzo stopped him. "Do you have any thoughts on who should be your mentor after graduation?" Kizaru paused, glancing at the ceiling before shrugging casually. "I haven't thought about it much. It's too troublesome." "You can take care of it, uncle." With that, Kizaru was gone, leaving Danzo to reflect on the future that was rapidly unfolding. At the conclusion of the first grade, Kizaru applied for early graduation and underwent a challenging assessment, facing off against a top shinobi. As news of this spread through the village via the Shimura clan, Kizaru quickly became the subject of heated discussions. Typically, students applying for early graduation only faced Chunin-level shinobi, but Kizaru had chosen to battle a Jonin, which was a considerable step up. The difference in difficulty was substantial, and the village buzzed with speculation over whether Kizaru, at just 6 years old, could truly possess the strength of a Jonin. Supporters of the Shimura clan argued that Kizaru's physical attributes, immense chakra reserves comparable to that of a tailed beast, and his mastery over chakra nature transformation meant he already exhibited the potential of a Jonin, if not an elite Jonin. In contrast, members of the Uchiha clan questioned Kizaru's proficiency in ninjutsu, pointing out that despite his raw power, Kizaru lacked real combat experience, making it difficult for him to fully showcase his potential in battle against seasoned Jonin. They believed his abilities might not yet measure up to the level of a Jonin, let alone an elite Jonin. Their skepticism wasn't driven by envy of Kizaru's talent, but rather by his defeat of one of their own, which sparked resentment. The Uchiha harbored a deep grudge against Danzo, who had long opposed their clan, and as a result, they regarded his allies with suspicion. Danzo, however, took no direct action in response to the Uchiha's doubts. Instead, he quietly made notes of their concerns, already planning their downfall. The Uchiha? Challenging my nephew? They've grown too bold. Traitors, they'll get their due punishment soon enough, Danzo muttered under his breath, though his thoughts were elsewhere. He was consumed with the task of selecting a suitable mentor for Kizaru, who, with his extraordinary potential, needed the best possible guidance. Danzo weighed two candidates for Kizaru's mentorship. The first was Heitake Sakumo, a renowned elite jonin from the Umbu with unmatched combat prowess and extensive experience in swordsmanship. The second was Orochimaru, a top-tier genius and one of Danzo's close allies, skilled in all forms of nature transformation. While both were highly capable, choosing between them was no easy task. This decision was not just significant to Danzo, it also caught the attention of Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. With Kizaru's obvious talents, there was no doubt that he could rise to become an elite, Kage-level shinobi in the future. Hiruzen was keen on ensuring that Kizaru did not deviate from the village's path, as such a gifted individual could be a tremendous asset or a formidable threat. Hiruzen, preferring Orochimaru as Kizaru's mentor, was also mindful of the delicate political balance between him and Danzo. Their shared history was fraught with differences in ideology, yet they had long cooperated out of necessity. Now, with Kizaru emerging as such a powerful figure, Hiruzen hoped to guide him in a direction more aligned with his own beliefs, preventing Danzo's more extreme tendencies from influencing the young boy. To this end, Hiruzen invited Danzo to his office, hoping to sway him into agreeing with his choice of mentor. As he prepared for their meeting, Hiruzen leaned against the window, puffing on his pipe and reflecting on how to approach his old friend. Danzo didn't make Hiruzen wait long. As the Hokage exhaled the smoke from his pipe, Danzo entered the office, shutting the door behind him. Hiruzen, what's on your mind? Danzo asked, his tone direct and to the point. Hiruzen smiled, gesturing for his friend to take a seat. Please, sit down, he said, moving back to his chair. Danzo settled into his seat, eyeing Hiruzen carefully. It wasn't difficult to guess the purpose of the meeting. Danzo, have you decided on a mentor for Kizaru? Hiruzen asked, trying to sound casual. Danzo's lips twitched upward at the corners, a sign that he had anticipated this conversation. I have two candidates in mind. The first is Heitake Sakumo. He paused for effect, watching Hiruzen's reaction. Seeing no change in expression, he continued, the second is your disciple, Orochimaru. Hiruzen remained outwardly calm but inwardly, he felt a brief tension. While he held great respect for Sakumo, he knew that the man's talents were better suited for the field than for nurturing the potential of a future leader like Kizaru. Sakumo is a capable ninja, but his focus is more on personal missions. He's not suited for mentorship at the level Kizaru requires, Hiruzen said softly, dismissing that option. Danzo, sensing his old friend's preference, nodded knowingly. Understood. Then I will leave it to Orochimaru, he replied, a slight smile tugging at his lips. Hiruzen, satisfied with the outcome, leaned back in his chair. Having someone as talented as Kizaru will certainly please Orochimaru, he said, knowing that his disciple would rise to the challenge. Danzo chuckled, his amusement evident. Kizaru is eager to learn from him. I think it's a good match, he said. In the quiet office, the two men exchanged satisfied glances, each content with the path they had chosen for Kizaru. In the peaceful courtyard, Kizaru sat beside the pond at its center. Holding a bamboo rod in one hand and a steaming cup of tea in the other, he rested cross-legged on the stone floor. This courtyard belonged to the Grand Elder, with the pond housing various ornamental fish, all of which were dearly cared for by the Elder. Kizaru wasn't fishing to catch anything, it was simply a way to find peace and pass the time. As the center of recent gossip in the village, Kizaru often found himself the subject of attention whenever he ventured outside, disrupting his desire for peace. To avoid the constant stares and whispers, he had taken to staying home, where he could embrace the quiet. Now, fishing in the Elder's courtyard had become his latest form of entertainment. Blowing on the steam from his tea, Kizaru took a sip and then gently set the cup down. With the cup aside, Kizaru closed his eyes, imagining a character card in his mind. This was the profile of a rather unremarkable figure, but the progress bar beneath it had moved from 10% when Kizaru enrolled to 17%, showing steady progress. He recalled how the progress bar had barely budged during his first month, just a 2% increase. But after the recent exams, it had jumped a full 5%, a clear result of his impressive performance and the reputation he'd gained thanks to Danzo's support. Being recognized and growing stronger, it was a comfortable life. Suddenly, an urgent, familiar voice broke his tranquility. "Big brother Kizaru, something's wrong. It's bad. Yoshihiko and some Uchihas are fighting." Kizaru turned toward the sound of the voice, seeing Shinobu hurrying into the courtyard. With a look of relief upon finding Kizaru, Shinobu quickly explained, "Big brother Kizaru, Yoshihiko, and a couple of Uchihas, they got into it. You need to come with me." "Where? What happened?" Kizaru asked without wasting time. "They were at T Street. We were shopping when we saw two Uchiha boys. They started bad-mouthing you, and Yoshihiko got angry and confronted them. It turned into a fight." Shinobu hurriedly explained. T Street was a busy part of the village, filled with tea shops and dessert stores. "Is Yoshihiko still there alone?" "Yoshihiko told me to go get help. I saw Yuki and Shintaro on my way here. They've already gone to the scene." Kizaru stood, gripping Shinobu's hand, and they quickly made their way toward the gate. But Kizaru, feeling the need to move faster, bent down and, with a swift motion, lifted Shinobu and used the body flicker technique, propelling them forward. "Hold on tight." "Got it." With Shinobu securely in his arms, Kizaru sped through the village, reaching the clan residence in moments. "What's happening?" Shinobu asked, confused, as they arrived. "They're back," Kizaru explained. Shinobu looked in the direction Kizaru was facing and saw Yuki and Shintaro dragging Yoshihiko towards them. "Yoshihiko? Yuki? Shintaro?" Shinobu waved eagerly. Seeing Shinobu, the three quickened their pace, and when they reached Kizaru, Yoshihiko, who had tried to act tough earlier, suddenly broke down in tears, rushing into Kizaru's arms. "Big brother Kizaru." "Wah." Kizaru gently patted Yoshihiko's head, noticing the dirt and a tear in the boy's clothes. "Did you lose?" Kizaru asked. Yoshihiko, still clutching Kizaru's legs, looked up with teary eyes and muttered, "The Uchihas went too far." "Too far?" Kizaru prompted. "When we got there, an older Uchiha named Fugaka was already there. He acted like he was trying to mediate, but he kept grabbing me," Yoshihiko explained, clearly frustrated. Kizaru nodded, piecing the situation together. "Let's get you cleaned up first," Kizaru said, scooping Yoshihiko up and heading toward the gate. "Those Uchihas are too much. I'll get them back next time." Yoshihiko fumed as Kizaru carried him. "Don't worry, I'm here," Kizaru said calmly. "Big brother Kizaru, are you going to teach them a lesson?" Yoshihiko asked eagerly. Kizaru, while walking into the clan residence, didn't respond right away. His thoughts wandered back to what his uncle, Danzo, had said about some members of the Uchiha clan being wary of him recently. "They're too weak for me to get involved," Kizaru replied. Yoshihiko, though disappointed, huffed, "Ah." Yuki and Shintaro, hearing Kizaru's response, also showed signs of disappointment, though Shintaro understood the reasoning and spoke up. "Yoshihiko, you're an idiot. If Kizaru took action now, it would only make things worse. You're the idiot." Yoshihiko retorted immediately, though he knew Shintaro had a point. Shintaro scoffed and decided not to continue the argument. "What? You want to take on the top ninjas from the Uchiha clan for the graduation assessment?" In Danzo's residence, Kizaru and Danzo sat across from each other. Kizaru's request made Danzo raise an eyebrow, his discomfort clear. He wasn't entirely in favor of it. The Uchiha clan's elite warriors all have the shuriken unlocked. Their combat abilities are generally beyond those of regular upper-level ninjas. On top of that, given the Uchiha's strained relationship with us, they won't hold back in a confrontation, Danzo explained, showing clear concern for Kizaru's suggestion. After a pause, Danzo continued, "If this is about Yoshihiko, it's unnecessary. That was just a small argument among kids. No need to make it into something bigger than it is. You'll have another opportunity to get even later." Kizaru shook his head, his gaze fixed on Danzo as he replied, You mentioned that some members of the Uchiha clan have questioned my abilities and strength. Rather than engaging in pointless back and forth with them, I'd prefer to face them directly and show them what I can do. Danzo raised an eyebrow, asking, is this still about Yoshihiko? Without speaking, Kizaru nodded slightly, confirming his feelings. If Yoshihiko had lost because of a lack of strength or skill, Kizaru would have accepted it. But if the Uchiha used underhanded tactics against him, Kizaru couldn't stand by idly. Kizaru knew that Danzo had a deep-seated animosity toward the Uchiha. As a result, Kizaru wasn't particularly upset by their doubts or harsh comments. But when it came to bullying his younger brother, Kizaru was determined to take action. Thus, the idea was born: Kizaru would challenge the Uchiha's most formidable warriors. He would defeat them in front of the entire village, leaving the Uchiha clan without a word to say. It was a simple yet effective plan. Danzo regarded Kizaru seriously, asking, do you believe you can win? Just a little bit. Kizaru flashed a confident grin, holding up his right hand and forming a loose C-shape with his thumb and index finger. Danzo couldn't help but smile at Kizaru's antics as he shook his head. This assessment is critical. You can't afford to lose. I'll support your challenge to the Uchiha clan's elite, but there's one condition. What's the condition? Danzo didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned forward, his posture commanding and imposing, and said, you must earn my approval by sparring with me first. Sounds intense. Kizaru, unaffected by Danzo's pressure, kept his relaxed posture and spoke cheerfully. Danzo relaxed his stance, nodding in approval of Kizaru's attitude. Take the time you need over the next month to prepare. Once you have my approval, I'll agree to your challenge. A month? You're thoughtful. Uncle. Kizaru responded with an easy tone. Prepare well and don't disappoint me. Don't get scared when the time comes. Kizaru teased. I'll be watching with interest, Danzo replied, eyeing Kizaru with admiration. Then wait for it. My dear uncle. Kizaru stood up and stretched, then added, it's getting late, I think I'll take a nap. See you. Hold on. Danzo stopped Kizaru just as he was about to leave. Kizaru, already halfway out the door, yawned lazily and returned to his seat. What's up, uncle? Your mentor has been decided. Oh, who is it? Kizaru asked, intrigued. The third Hokage's disciple, Orochimaru. Danzo answered. Orochimaru. Kizaru pondered, his gaze drifting toward the ceiling. Does that disappoint you? Danzo asked, sensing Kizaru's surprise. Kizaru wasn't afraid of Orochimaru being his mentor. He simply wondered whether, in the future, Orochimaru would be able to defeat him. After all, if the teacher couldn't overcome the student, it would be rather embarrassing, wouldn't it? I have no objections. Kizaru quickly responded, shaking off his concerns. Good. Danzo said with satisfaction. Hiruzen and I have arranged for Orochimaru to mentor you. The announcement will be made after you pass the graduation assessment. Then I'll be in your care, uncle. Rest up now. All right, see you later, uncle. Don't dawdle. After bidding Danzo farewell and returning to his own house, Kizaru, who had said he'd take a nap, didn't actually sleep. Instead, he sat in the living room, checking the progress of his fusion rate. The fusion rate had increased slightly, now reaching 18%. Only 2 more percentage points, and Kizaru would be able to integrate Admiral Kizaru's new abilities. Physical skills, swordsmanship, haki, physical enhancement, or perhaps a boost in his fruits abilities. Kizaru was eagerly awaiting the integration of his new power. Though he was confident in his current strength, Kizaru understood that without Danzo's approval or the ability to defeat the top Uchiha ninjas, he still needed that extra boost. Once he had the new abilities integrated, he was certain of his victory over the Uchiha clan's best. Time passed quickly, and 3 days later, while Kizaru was taking a nap at the ninja school, he suddenly heard a ding sound in his mind. Half asleep, Kizaru lifted his head from the desk and straightened up. Stretching and rubbing his eyes, Kizaru became fully awake, disregarding the growing irritation of the instructor, Yamakawa Seiji. He eagerly checked the progress bar in his mind. 20%. Finally made it. Kizaru couldn't contain his excitement. Without delay, he began the process of integrating his new ability. A warm, soothing sensation spread through his body, making him feel incredibly comfortable. As the information flooded into his mind, Kizaru learned about his newly integrated ability, enhanced physical attributes. He had successfully integrated Admiral Kizaru's youth phase physical strength. Initially, Kizaru's self-trained body strength was already on par with upper-level ninjas, but this enhancement pushed him even further, beyond his previous limits. His chakra reserves also grew, and his body became noticeably stronger. Grinning with satisfaction, Kizaru felt the surge of power within him. The anticipation for his upcoming battles with Danzo and the Uchiha clan's top ninjas only grew stronger. A mischievous thought crossed his mind: don't be scared now. Orochimaru. Walking down the street after purchasing necessary supplies, ready to return to his hidden research lab, Orochimaru was interrupted by a voice he recognized calling out from behind. A small flicker of joy appeared in his heart, but his expression remained emotionless as he turned around. Not far from him, a young man with white hair was grinning widely, enthusiastically waving his hand. The voice calling out to Orochimaru belonged to none other than his former teammate and close companion, Jiraiya. Jiraiya approached him rapidly and placed his hand on Orochimaru's shoulder in a friendly gesture. Orochimaru, showing his usual disdain, swiftly brushed Jiraiya's hand off his shoulder. "What's up?" Orochimaru asked indifferently, his tone reflecting his usual detached nature. Jiraiya, accustomed to this behavior, wasn't bothered by the cold reception. "I heard from Sarutobi-sensei that he found a student for you," he said, leaning in slightly with a curious smile. Orochimaru gave a slight nod. "A child from the Shimura clan, Danzo's nephew," he replied with little enthusiasm. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. "Ah, that brat, huh? I've heard he's some kind of genius," he teased, a bit sarcastic. "I wonder if he's more talented than you, the former genius." "Boring," Orochimaru coldly replied, his thoughts already elsewhere, focused on his research. He turned to leave. "Hey, wait." Jiraiya called out, catching up to him. "What do you think of this genius kid? Excited to be a teacher for the first time?" Orochimaru paused, a brief moment of hesitation crossing his face. "Sarutobi-sensei asked me to take him on as a favor. I wasn't really interested," he admitted, showing a rare uncertainty. Jiraiya chuckled. "You don't like him? Is this what they call, like repels like, one genius can't stand another?" he joked. "No, it's not that," Orochimaru replied, his voice lacking confidence. "I just don't know if I'm fit to be a teacher right now." Jiraiya's face softened, and he reached out to pat Orochimaru's shoulder reassuringly. "It's fine, you're a genius, you'll be a great teacher," he said sincerely. Orochimaru felt somewhat better, showing a faint smile at his friend's encouragement. "Of course, you fool. Damn it, Orochimaru." Jiraiya shouted in mock anger, before getting hit on the head by a sudden blow. Orochimaru's eyes widened as he saw the bump rapidly swelling on Jiraiya's head. He silently thought to himself, "Tsunade is getting more dangerous." Tsunade stood behind Jiraiya, smirking as she caught Orochimaru's gaze. "Finished with your hospital work?" he asked, initiating a conversation with her. "Not really, I snuck out," Tsunade answered nonchalantly. Orochimaru sighed inwardly at her carefree attitude. Jiraiya, still rubbing his head, glared at Tsunade. "You violent woman," he grumbled. "Who told you to shout in public?" "It was annoying," Tsunade retorted without a hint of apology. Jiraiya muttered under his breath, "No wonder no one wants you," still rubbing his sore head. Tsunade's eyes narrowed dangerously, and her fist clenched as she stepped toward him. "What did you say?" she growled, the sound of cracking knuckles filling the air. Jiraiya quickly moved to stand beside Orochimaru. "Hey, calm down, everyone's watching. Don't make a scene." Tsunade huffed, relaxing her fist but giving Jiraiya a menacing look. Both Orochimaru and Jiraiya breathed a collective sigh of relief. After the moment passed, Tsunade glanced at them and asked, "So, what were you two talking about?" "Orochimaru's taking on a student." Jiraiya jumped in before Orochimaru could respond. "Taking on a student?" Tsunade's eyes lit up with interest, clearly intrigued by the news. "The Shimura clans, Danzo's nephew," Orochimaru explained. "Danzo's nephew?" Tsunade's face twisted in disdain, but it wasn't aimed at the child, rather, at Danzo himself. Tsunade had always found Danzo's traditional and ruthless nature distasteful, as well as his manipulative tendencies. If the Chimera kid is anything like Danzo. Tsunade shivered at the thought and glanced at Orochimaru sympathetically. Orochimaru, aware of Tsunade's thoughts, calmly replied, I've seen the reports on the child. He's very different from Danzo. That kid from the Chimera clan has been getting a lot of attention lately. They say he's a genius, with potential like the first Hokage, Jiraiya added. Tsunade's interest piqued further. Potential like the first Hokage. She mused aloud, before scoffing, it's probably Danzo trying to puff up his own family again. Shameless. Jiraiya, watching Tsunade's reaction, and then looking at Orochimaru's calm face, suddenly came up with an idea. Why don't we test this kid ourselves? Let's see if he's really as talented as the rumors say. Jiraiya suggested eagerly. Orochimaru, uninterested, replied indifferently, boring. Tsunade, however, was far more interested. Potential like the first Hokage. We should go check this out. She insisted, practically pleading. With a sigh, Orochimaru agreed. Fine, but behave yourselves. Don't make a spectacle. Tsunade smacked him on the back, nearly knocking the wind out of him, and laughed. Don't worry, with me here, nothing will go wrong. Orochimaru muttered to himself, it's precisely because you're here that things tend to go wrong. Tsunade caught the remark. What did you say? She demanded. Jiraiya quickly responded, let's go already. Using the body flicker jutsu, he shot off toward the destination. Damn it, stop right there. Tsunade shouted as she chased after him. Watching the two of them rush off, Orochimaru could only silently follow. Big brother Kizaru, aren't you coming back with us? Yoshihiko, Yuki, and Shinobu were gathered around Kizaru by the school gate. I'm heading to the training ground to practice ninjutsu. You guys can go ahead, Kizaru replied. Having just enhanced his physical abilities, Kizaru wanted to test and adapt to his newly strengthened body. Big brother Kizaru, can we come with you? Yoshihiko eagerly asked. Kizaru, about to tap Yoshihiko's head as usual, stopped mid-motion when he realized that he might not be able to control his newfound strength. Not today. You guys head back first. I'll see you tonight. Yoshihiko, disappointed by Kizaru's refusal, lowered his head slightly, feeling a bit down. Stop acting like a clingy puppy, always bothering big brother Kizaru. Yuki scolded Yoshihiko. Who's always calling out, big bro Kizaru this, big bro Kizaru that, at home? Or sticking close to him even while eating? You're one to talk. Yoshihiko shot back, looking at Yuki. A faint blush appeared on Yuki's face, and she coldly replied, just hurry up and don't delay big brother Kizaru's time. Humph. Yoshihiko snorted but turned back to Kizaru. We'll go home first. Stay safe on your way back, Kizaru waved at the three as they walked away. This kid sure is popular, Tsunade commented from under a large tree on the right side of the school. Is he really only 6 years old? Jiraiya, on the other side of the tree trunk, asked in disbelief, echoing the same surprise many had expressed. Orochimaru, standing behind the tree, watched carefully, intrigued by his potential future disciple. How did this child develop so quickly? Orochimaru muttered to himself, his curiosity piqued. Kizaru watched the three little figures disappear and pulled his gaze away. He slowly returned his right hand to his pocket and scanned his surroundings. Is that old man, Hiruzen, spying on me again? He thought to himself, moving cautiously. Konoha village had 50 different training grounds scattered around, and the one Kizaru was heading to was on the outskirts, rarely visited. The ninja academy sat in the center of the village, far from the training ground. To save time, Kizaru used the body flicker jutsu to get there quickly. In about 10 minutes, Kizaru arrived at the designated training ground. The area was neglected, weeds had overtaken the place, and it seemed no one had been there for months. Kizaru was satisfied with the privacy this offered. For now, he didn't want to reveal too much about his strength to the villagers. It wasn't about hiding his power but rather about saving his full strength for the upcoming graduation assessment, where he planned to impress and gain some recognition to further enhance his fusion rate. Standing in the center of the field, Kizaru warmed up, stretching and getting a feel for his improved physical strength. As he did so, Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru, who had been observing from a distance, crept into the surrounding bushes. Hiding in the dense foliage, they exchanged glances, preparing for their next move. Jiraiya, you go first. Tsunade whispered. Jiraiya, wide-eyed, pointed at himself and shook his head, refusing. Without wasting time, Tsunade extended her fist towards him, silently demanding action. Jiraiya, sweating, reluctantly nodded. Tsunade flashed him a satisfied smile and waved her hand towards the training ground, signaling him to proceed. Jiraiya, after using the transformation jutsu, changed his appearance and, with a few hand seals, used the body flicker jutsu to silently move toward Kizaru. Tsunade watched eagerly, anticipation growing on her face as she observed Kizaru. A talent like the first Hokage's? A rare genius. Let's see what you can really do. Meanwhile, Orochimaru remained calm, eyes fixated on Kizaru as he waited, intrigued. Jiraiya, now in the form of a middle-aged man with short brown hair and dark skin, approached cautiously. Rather than attacking directly, he observed Kizaru in the center of the field. When Kizaru bent over to stretch, Jiraiya swiftly drew two kunai from his sheath, aiming for non-lethal areas like Kizaru's thighs and rear. As Kizaru bent over, he heard the movement behind him. Reacting instantly, Kizaru propelled himself into action, using his arms to spring back. In an instant, he twisted his body backward, narrowly avoiding both kunai as they flew past him. The kunai hit the ground with a thud, halfway stuck into the earth. Kizaru, maintaining his calm demeanor, placed his hands in his pockets and scanned the area. That was close. Almost got hit, he remarked, his words carrying a mocking tone. Tsunade muttered under her breath, what a brat who loves to show off. Not to be outdone, Jiraiya continued his assault. He vanished from the tree branch, appearing behind Kizaru, holding shuriken and aiming to strike. Kizaru, sensing the attack, leaned left and dodged the shuriken. Jiraiya quickly adjusted, using his finger to alter the trajectory of the shuriken, now aiming for Kizaru's side. Kizaru, his back to Jiraiya, reacted with lightning speed. He flipped midair, lifting his right foot for a powerful side kick. His foot collided with Jiraiya before the shuriken could even land. Bang! Jiraiya, caught off guard, was kicked with immense force and slammed into a large tree. The impact left a crater in the tree trunk, and Jiraiya coughed up blood as he struggled to regain his bearings. I underestimated this kid, he muttered through a smile, wiping the blood from his lips. Despite his injuries, Jiraiya's respect for Kizaru grew. The kid's physical strength was already nearing 60 to 70% of Tsunade's. Jiraiya re-evaluated the power he had just witnessed and knew that Kizaru was not someone to be taken lightly. Falling from the tree hole, Jiraiya gripped his kunai tightly in his right hand, positioning it in a defensive stance across his chest. Close call there, almost got taken out by an old man. That was truly terrifying. Kizaru pretended to be startled, patting his chest dramatically. This guy is so annoying. Jiraiya wiped fresh blood from the corner of his mouth, quietly grumbling under his breath. An up-and-coming prodigy from Konoha, huh? Quite a handful, Jiraiya said harshly, trying to mimic the style of the Kumigaku or ninjas. Young punks like you need to be dealt with before you get too strong. With that, Jiraiya bent his knees, pushing off the ground with all his strength to leap high into the air. He aimed his kunai directly at Kizaru, hurling it with force. The kunai flew with a sharp whistle, heading straight toward Kizaru's face. Old man, you don't seriously think? Kizaru tilted his head just enough to avoid the kunai's strike. I've grown a little since last time. As he finished, Kizaru raised his right hand, giving a provocative sea gesture that could irritate some nations. Enough with the nonsense, kid. As Jiraiya descended, he quickly formed hand seals, activating his earth release, swamp of the underworld. Kizaru lowered his gaze to the ground, noticing the once solid earth underfoot had morphed into a thick, sinking swamp. This is the price of underestimating me, brat. Time to meet your end. Jiraiya's voice rang out as he released his fire release, flame bullet technique. Simple tricks like that won't do the job, old man. Kizaru retorted, performing hand seals and exhaling sharply to unleash his wind release, vacuum wave. A barrage of wind blades, as swift and precise as a whip, shot toward Jiraiya, moving with the agility of a serpent. Jiraiya danced around the attack, narrowly avoiding the deadly wind. He didn't let up, continuing to form seals, unleashing a line of fire straight into the path of Kizaru's wind technique. The fire obliterated the wind blades, roaring toward Kizaru. From the bushes, Tsunade, watching the battle unfold, saw Jiraiya use advanced fire release jutsu, which made her ready to spring into action. Jiraiya is pushing it. Tsunade stood half up, preparing to rush in. Orochimaru, however, remained unfazed, seemingly unconcerned. That kid's fine, Orochimaru spoke calmly. What? Tsunade turned to him, startled. He's already escaped, Orochimaru added without looking away. At that, Tsunade quickly turned her gaze back to the battle, seeing Kizaru already breaking free from the swamp's grasp and soaring into the air. That was close, old man. Kizaru laughed, leaping above Jiraiya's attack. Without a moment's pause, Jiraiya surged forward, throwing 3 kunai from his thigh pouch as he charged. The kunai sliced through the air, heading for Kizaru. Kizaru seemed to be caught, with no ground to evade, yet instead of using body flicker, he extended his index finger. Jiraiya slowed his charge slightly, his instincts on high alert, wondering what the young ninja was planning. A blinding golden light flashed from Kizaru's finger, and a laser shot out, melting the kunai mid-flight before shooting straight toward Jiraiya. Jiraiya reacted instinctively, leaping to the side just in time to avoid the laser's path. Boom. The laser slammed into the ground, causing a massive explosion that sent dirt and debris flying. Jiraiya quickly shielded his face, relieved that he'd avoided a direct hit. What kind of jutsu is that? Some form of lightning release. Jiraiya muttered to himself as he looked up at Kizaru. Ah, you figured it out, Kizaru said, his face betraying a mischievous smile. So, what should I do now, old man? His grin widened as he glanced toward Jiraiya. Looks like I'll have to take down someone like you. Jiraiya's heart skipped a beat, sensing real danger for the first time in the encounter. Then try it, Brad. Jiraiya shouted with defiance. In that case, I won't hold back, old man. Kizaru's grin grew even wider. He vanished in a blur, using the body flicker technique, and reappeared in a flash of light right before Jiraiya. Kizaru's form became a radiant burst of light, too bright to look at directly. Did he just turn into light? Tsunade gasped, eyes wide. What kind of jutsu is that? Orochimaru asked, intrigued by the spectacle. For Jiraiya, the situation was much more complicated. The intense light from Kizaru overwhelmed his senses, temporarily blinding him. Jiraiya squeezed his eyes shut as tears streamed down. Trusting his ninja instincts, he leaped backward, narrowly avoiding another strike. However, Kizaru wasn't about to let up. He charged, using his speed to close the distance between them in an instant. Ever been kicked by light, old man? Kizaru sneered as he raised his leg. In a flash, his leg became a golden light, kicking Jiraiya with overwhelming speed and power. The impact sent Jiraiya flying through the air, crashing through 3 trees before slamming into the ground and sliding several meters. Kizaru stood poised, his finger lighting up again, preparing to unleash another deadly blast. So, goodbye, old man. Wait. Tsunade sprang from behind the bushes, rushing toward the battlefield. Kizaru's gaze fell on her, his expression turning intrigued as he noted her beauty and familiar face. Ah, it's you, Kizaru smirked, his eyes scanning her from top to bottom. The one they call Tsunade. Tsunade, noticing Kizaru's blatant gaze, explained quickly, the man you just fought is Jiraiya, a renowned ninja from Konoha. Kizaru's grin widened. Ah, Lord Jiraiya. My bad, he's such a great actor. I genuinely thought he was a spy sent by Kumigakuer to take me out. I nearly had a heart attack. Tsunade, her face twitching with annoyance, struggled to hold back her anger, as Kizaru's mocking tone only made her want to strike him. Inhaling deeply, Tsunade gazed at Kizaru and continued, Jiraiya received word that you were interested in becoming Orochimaru's disciple. Curious about your abilities, he wanted to test you on Orochimaru's behalf. After retracting her finger, Tsunade scratched her head, while Kizaru maintained his usual smile. My apologies. I didn't realize how severe Lord Jiraiya's injuries were. Upon hearing Kizaru's words, Tsunade shifted her gaze toward the direction Jiraiya had been sent flying. At that moment, the dust was starting to settle. Jiraiya, with his clothes torn, covered in dust and blood, was clearly visible to Tsunade. Alive and breathing. A sigh of relief escaped Tsunade's lips, and she turned her attention back to Kizaru. He'll be fine. No, I'm not. Lying on the ground, gazing at the sky, Jiraiya was on the verge of tears. Princess Tsunade, why not heal Lord Jiraiya first? Kizaru kindly suggested, following Tsunade's turn of attention, his gaze falling on the battered Jiraiya who appeared near death after being released from his transformation technique. Hearing Kizaru's words, Jiraiya felt a warmth rise in his chest, and his affection for Kizaru grew instantly. He thought gratefully, "My little disciple is so considerate, truly a kind soul." "He won't die with me here," Tsunade said confidently, crossing her arms. Crack. Upon hearing Tsunade's remark, Jiraiya felt like his heart was shattering, and his desire to cry grew even stronger. "Let Lord Jiraiya rest for a moment," Kizaru agreed, nodding. Crack. The heartbreak intensified. Jiraiya's soul seemed to have shattered entirely. No more love remained in this world. Just when Jiraiya had lost all hope, everything before his eyes went black, and a figure appeared beside him, casting a shadow. "You fool." Orochimaru's voice was cold as he squatted down. Although Orochimaru wasn't specifically trained in medical ninjutsu, as a genius of ninjutsu, he had mastered some healing techniques. After carefully examining Jiraiya's injuries, Orochimaru found the poor man had subcutaneous bleeding, internal damage, and several broken ribs. Sensing Kizaru's unusual strength, Orochimaru began to heal Jiraiya. "Orochimaru." Jiraiya whispered, his voice full of emotion. In that moment, Orochimaru appeared almost compassionate, a feeling that stirred something inside Jiraiya. "Keep that disgusting look to yourself. Don't think anything strange, idiot." Orochimaru's sharp tone made Jiraiya uncomfortable, his words cold. "You, oh." Jiraiya was about to fire back but swallowed his words when he felt the dangerous intensity of Orochimaru's gaze. Kizaru and Tsunade couldn't avoid Orochimaru's sharp focus. The two exchanged looks. "It seems Lord Jiraiya will be fine now," Kizaru said, observing Orochimaru's young self with a discerning eye. "Humph." Tsunade made a dismissive noise, turning back to Kizaru. "Kid, that light technique you used earlier, what was that?" Fearing she might have crossed a line, Tsunade quickly added, "If it's a touchy subject, you don't have to say anything." "The light technique? There's no secret to it. I recently awakened a bloodline limit called Light Release." "Light Release?" Tsunade muttered, confused. Wasn't the Shimura clan known for wind release techniques? Since when did they have a bloodline limit? Many questions filled Tsunade's mind. She studied Kizaru carefully, and after a pause, asked, "Is Light Release a self-made bloodline limit?" Kizaru was tempted to boast a little and claim credit for it, but recalling the advice of his elders, he responded as they instructed. "This bloodline limit comes from the Shimura clan's ancestors. It's just that no one has awakened it in a long time." Ar. Tsunade thought to herself but nodded as if accepting Kizaru's explanation. "There's no record of such a bloodline limit in the Shimura clan's history," Tsunade silently affirmed. The light release was likely something Kizaru had created himself. As she processed this, Tsunade couldn't help but admit that with Kizaru's strength and raw talent, even at 6 years old, he could one day rival or even surpass her grandfather's power. Looking up at the sky, she imagined her grandfather's proud face. "Grandpa, there's a remarkable child in the village. He might grow stronger than even you." While Tsunade lost herself in thoughts of her grandfather, Kizaru didn't simply stand there. He approached her. Though he was only 6, Kizaru's height of 175 centimeters already surpassed Tsunade's 163 centimeters. He lowered his head slightly, and their eyes met as Tsunade gazed upward. Kizaru's mischievous charm caught Tsunade off guard, and she quickly looked away. It wasn't some cliché love at first sight moment. Tsunade was simply put off by being looked down upon by someone so young. Kizaru didn't mind the avoidance of eye contact. He didn't overthink it or assume Tsunade was shy. "Princess Tsunade." "Stop." Tsunade interjected. Though only 6, Kizaru's height and muscular build made it impossible to treat him as a child. When he called her princess, Tsunade found it uncomfortable. "Call me big sister, not princess." "Well, big sister Tsunade, I hope you won't disclose that I have a bloodline limit." Tsunade nodded in understanding. She knew Kizaru wanted to stay under the radar, to keep a low profile and focus on growth. It made sense. "Don't worry. We won't share what happened here today with anyone," Tsunade promised, patting her chest confidently. "Thank you, big sister Tsunade." "No need to thank me, it's nothing." Tsunade smiled. Then, as Tsunade continued to study Kizaru's strong physique, she couldn't resist reaching out to squeeze his arm. So firm. So solid. While marveling internally, Tsunade beamed and asked, "You really are just 6 years old?" "I know it sounds unbelievable, but yes, I really did just turn 6, Kizaru replied with a slight, embarrassed grin. "Brat, do you want to become my disciple? I can teach you the art of monstrous strength." Though Tsunade doubted she would ever reach the power of her grandfather, she couldn't help but feel excited at the prospect of training someone with such natural strength. Kizaru, with his formidable physique and potential, could become an unstoppable force on the battlefield with her guidance. He's a living weapon. Tsunade imagined Kizaru wreaking havoc on the battlefield and couldn't help but sigh in admiration. "I don't mind, but you may need to convince Hokage-sama and my uncle first," Kizaru grinned. "Easy, leave it to me," Tsunade replied confidently. All 3 of the Jonin were present, and Kizaru felt it was inconvenient to continue his practice. After a brief conversation with Tsunade, he said his goodbyes and left the training ground. As Kizaru walked away, Tsunade turned her attention back to the spot where Jiraiya was lying. Approaching him, Tsunade crouched down beside Jiraiya, following in Orochimaru's earlier actions. Thanks to Orochimaru's initial treatment, Jiraiya's injuries had been alleviated somewhat, and his spirits had improved a little. "Heh, look at this kid," Tsunade began, intending to make a teasing remark, but upon seeing Jiraiya's sorry state, she couldn't bring herself to continue. Without another word, Tsunade took over from Orochimaru and began tending to Jiraiya's wounds. After finishing her round of treatment, stabilizing his injuries, Tsunade paused and then stood up. "That should be enough. Just get him to the hospital for some rest," she said, giving Orochimaru a nod, signaling for him to help Jiraiya up. Understanding her cue, Orochimaru reached out and carefully helped Jiraiya to his feet. Ow. The sudden movement caused Jiraiya to wince in pain, a sharp breath escaping his lips. "Hey. I'm hurt, you know. Be gentle." Orochimaru remained silent, adjusting his pace and supporting Jiraiya more carefully with his hands and shoulders. "Quit whining. You got beaten up by a 6-year-old, and you're still complaining," Tsunade said, her voice laced with mockery. Jiraiya wanted to argue but realized Tsunade's words were too true, so he lowered his head and muttered softly, "A 6-year-old? What kind of 6-year-old looks like that?" Both Tsunade and Orochimaru overheard his grumbling, exchanging a glance before they began to chuckle. Their laughter grew as they shared a moment of amusement. "Still laughing, huh? That's too much," Jiraiya grumbled as he saw the 2 of them enjoying the moment at his expense. "Enough. Let's go," Tsunade commanded, cutting off any further complaints from Jiraiya. With that, Tsunade walked up to Jiraiya's side, and with Orochimaru's help, they carefully made their way to the village hospital. Although Jiraiya's injuries weren't life-threatening, they were still serious enough that Tsunade and Orochimaru moved slowly to avoid causing him more pain. It took nearly 30 minutes to reach the hospital. Once inside, Tsunade swiftly arranged for Jiraiya to be admitted and even found a doctor to assist him. "Just rest up here. We'll leave for now," Tsunade said, standing by his bed, her hands on her hips. "I got it," Jiraiya responded bitterly, his upper body wrapped in bandages as he lay in the hospital bed. Orochimaru didn't speak. After a glance at Jiraiya, he followed Tsunade out of the ward. After exiting the hospital, Tsunade and Orochimaru walked side by side. Tsunade was deep in thought, considering how to bring up Kizaru's request to become her disciple. As she was pondering, Orochimaru spoke up first. "I overheard your conversation with Kizaru. You're planning to take him as your disciple." Tsunade stopped in her tracks and turned to face Orochimaru. A little flustered, Tsunade didn't hesitate to admit her decision, her straightforward nature taking over. "Yeah, I see potential in that kid. His physical abilities are a good match for my monstrous strength technique." Orochimaru was quiet for a moment. After witnessing Kizaru's battle with Jiraiya, he too had come to appreciate the boy's strength. Kizaru was truly a prodigy. That was how Orochimaru regarded him. Having seen Kizaru's display of power at such a young age, Orochimaru felt both a sense of pressure and, oddly enough, joy. Who wouldn't want to have a genius like that as a disciple? Orochimaru was eager to take Kizaru under his wing. However, after hearing Tsunade's words and reflecting on the situation, Orochimaru paused. On one hand, there was his longtime friend, Tsunade, and on the other, there was the brilliant Kizaru, whom he also admired. After much internal conflict, Orochimaru finally made a decision. I'll speak with Sarutobi-sensei about this, Orochimaru said. Thanks, Orochimaru. Tsunade smiled, patting him on the shoulder. I'll go talk to the old man and sort things out now. With a small smile, Orochimaru remarked, You are always in such a rush, Tsunade. I don't come across geniuses like that often. I have to take him on, Tsunade replied with a determined tone. Without waiting, Tsunade grabbed Orochimaru's arm and began heading toward the Hokage building. In the Hokage building, Hiruzen had just finished reviewing paperwork and was enjoying a peaceful moment, gazing out at the village through a crystal ball. Heh. The beautiful view caught Hiruzen's attention as he gazed intently into the crystal ball, trying to relax after a long day. Suddenly, the office door was thrown open with a loud bang. Without needing to look, Hiruzen immediately knew who it was. He deftly placed the documents aside, covering the crystal ball, and turned to face the entrance. Tsunade had barged into the room, as was her way. Orochimaru followed behind her, and Hiruzen's gaze shifted to the scattered paperwork on his desk, quickly deducing what had happened earlier. Normally, Tsunade would have scolded him for his lack of organization, but today, there was something else she needed from him. Ignoring the clutter, Tsunade and Orochimaru walked over to the desk, pulled out chairs, and sat down. Orochimaru, Tsunade, what brings you here? Hiruzen greeted them with a gentle smile. Old man, I'm taking that kid Kizaru on as my disciple, Tsunade said, leaning forward, her tone firm. Hiruzen was taken aback. He looked to Orochimaru for clarification, clearly confused. Orochimaru and I have already discussed it, Tsunade continued. He's agreed to give him to me. Taking a deep breath, Hiruzen leaned back in his chair, sipping his tea as he studied both of them carefully. His gaze eventually settled on Tsunade. Don't be so hasty. You still need to explain why, Hiruzen said with a smile. Jiraiya fought that brat. He lost and ended up in the hospital. The kid is strong, and I like him, Tsunade explained. Hiruzen nearly choked on his tea, caught off guard by her bluntness. He quickly set the cup down, wiping tea from his clothes and looking at Orochimaru in shock. After all these years, Jiraiya had developed into a strong individual, capable of holding his own. Yet, a 6-year-old had defeated him and sent him to the hospital. Hiruzen struggled to wrap his head around it. With a look of surprise, mixed with doubt and confusion, Orochimaru felt the urge to speak up. I heard from Jiraiya that Kizaru is interested in becoming my student, and considering the recent rumors surrounding Kizaru in the village. In contrast to Tsunade's direct explanation, Orochimaru took his time to detail the entire sequence of events. After hearing Orochimaru's account, Hiruzen's initial shock gradually diminished. Jiraiya had underestimated his opponent, and without utilizing his signature techniques, he was easily defeated by Kizaru, who had concealed his true strength. If that was the case, then he could reluctantly accept it. Although Jiraiya had been careless, not having enough information and restricting his ninjutsu use, the fact that a 6-year-old child defeated a 20-year-old elite jonin nearing the peak of his power was, frankly, foolish. What a fool. While inwardly criticizing his unreliable disciple, Hiruzen couldn't help but feel a sense of shock and admiration for Kizaru's potential. Kizaru is truly a prodigy of this generation. Originally, the Shimura clan had coined this phrase to describe Kizaru, and it had spread through the village, sparking much discussion and approval among the villagers. However, regardless of how others viewed it, Hiruzen remained skeptical. As a disciple of the second Hokage, Hiruzen had personally witnessed the power of the first Hokage. The destructive force of those techniques had made a lasting impression on him. In Hiruzen's mind, such heights could never be reached again. It was a level that no shinobi could attain, a near-divine power. That was Hiruzen's perception of Senju Hashirama, the first Hokage. With such an impression in mind, Hiruzen could never fully accept the idea that Kizaru could reach Hashirama's potential. Was Kizaru really born with the same kind of potential? At that moment, Hiruzen had the sudden urge to smoke, but Tsunade's presence in the room made him hold back. After all, his office might not survive Tsunade's punches. Suppressing the urge, Hiruzen felt a bit troubled and glanced at his 2 grown disciples before his eyes fell on a picture on the table. It showed himself and his 3 young disciples. A new thought suddenly struck him. Kizaru not only had exceptional physical strength and chakra but also displayed impressive abilities in both taijutsu and ninjutsu. Such an all-around genius, whether entrusted to Orochimaru, who excelled in ninjutsu, or Tsunade, who was exceptional in taijutsu and medical ninjutsu, would be a waste. Kizaru needed a teacher who was powerful, experienced, and versatile. As Hiruzen surveyed the office, it became clear to him, apart from himself, who else could fulfill such a demanding and challenging role. Not to brag, but among the living shinobi in the world, he, the ninja professor, would dare to claim second place. Who could claim first? With this realization, Hiruzen nodded to himself and looked again at his two grown disciples. Clearing his throat, he coughed a few times to ease the tension. Hiruzen began to consider how to convince his disciples. Though it was somewhat unethical for a teacher to take another teacher's disciple, for the sake of Kizaru's talent and the future of the village, Hiruzen was willing to make some sacrifices. With his plan taking shape, Hiruzen gained confidence. Cough, cough. Once again, he coughed lightly and began to form his words. Hearing you both talk, it seems the child has exceptional abilities in both ninjutsu and taijutsu, Hiruzen said, feigning deep thought. If that's the case, I will need to carefully choose a teacher for him. Old man, what do you mean by that? Tsunade asked quickly, sensing something was off. Tsunade, you have exceptional skills in taijutsu and medical ninjutsu, but you aren't as proficient in other ninjutsu, Hiruzen remarked. What's the issue? My grandfather left so much ninjutsu data. Let him practice it on his own. Tsunade replied sharply. Shaking his head in disapproval, Hiruzen countered, no, this will hinder the child and waste his potential in ninjutsu. Turning to Orochimaru, Hiruzen added, Orochimaru, your ninjutsu skills are outstanding, but you fall short in taijutsu compared to Tsunade. Orochimaru nodded in agreement with the teacher's assessment. Choosing a teacher for this child is truly a complex matter. Among the younger generation of ninjas in the village, it seems there isn't a suitable candidate for the task. Hiruzen emphasized the word, young deliberately. Bang. I've got it. Tsunade, who had been listening, suddenly slammed her hand on the table and exclaimed, excitement in her voice. Hiruzen looked at Tsunade, wondering if this little firecracker, who often let things slip, had figured out his intentions. Not bad. This is really not easy. As Hiruzen was musing, Tsunade continued eagerly. Let Orochimaru and I teach him together. I'll handle taijutsu and medical ninjutsu, and Orochimaru will focus on ninjutsu. Tsunade suggested confidently, with both of us guiding him, we won't waste the child's talent. That's reasonable. Orochimaru thought to himself, intrigued by the idea. Seems like a good plan. Hiruzen considered it, but soon rejected the notion. For the future of the village, such a prodigious child should be taught by none other than the professor himself. The thought of shaping a future ninja god moved Hiruzen's heart, and he couldn't let it slip away. I've made my decision. I will personally teach Kizaru. For the sake of the village's future, even if it's difficult, I'll take on the challenge. Hiruzen declared firmly. What? Tsunade jumped to her feet, stunned. Orochimaru, too, was shocked, his eyes wide. Although being Hokage comes with many responsibilities, for the sake of not wasting the child's talent and for the future of the village, it's worth the effort. Hiruzen said with determination. How shameless. Tsunade glared at her teacher, wanting to scold him, but held back. Orochimaru had no objections, having already handed over his disciple to Tsunade, though he was a little surprised. I'll talk to Tsunade about this. You don't need to persuade me, Hiruzen said, quickly wrapping things up, concerned that Tsunade might say something rash. Humph. Tsunade crossed her arms, a snort of displeasure escaping her lips. Ignoring her attitude, Hiruzen smiled warmly and added, from now on, Kizaru is your little junior. Take good care of him. Understood. Tsunade muttered coldly, clearly still upset. She stormed out. Sensei, I'll go check on Tsunade, Orochimaru said as he turned to Hiruzen, noticing Tsunade heading towards the door. Go ahead. Hiruzen said with a smile. You've done well, Orochimaru. Orochimaru nodded and quickly followed Tsunade out. Tonight, you're daring to face me? Danzo stood in the courtyard, his hands behind his back, his gaze hard as he eyed Kizaru. It had been only 3 days since Kizaru had boldly challenged the Uchiha clan's Jonin during the graduation exam, demanding he pass Danzo's test within a month. Danzo had granted him a full month to prepare, but Kizaru had only trained for 3 days. This kid was far too confident for his own good. The praise he received from the village, combined with the weakness of his peers, had inflated his ego, preventing him from truly understanding his limits. Danzo felt both anger and concern. This was a dangerous mindset. Pride and arrogance were the greatest enemies of a genius, and Kizaru needed to realize this before it was too late. I won't hold back in this exam. You'd better think carefully, Kizaru. Danzo's voice carried a warning. Oh, how terrifying, uncle. Kizaru smirked, seemingly unbothered by the warning. Danzo snorted inwardly, maintaining an even expression. Since you're so confident, I'll accept. Tonight, at 8 p.m., at the clan's training ground. Don't be late. Don't worry, uncle. I'll be there. Kizaru responded with a grin. Danzo gave a sharp nod. I hope he won't disappoint me. Kizaru chuckled, you'd better be ready. I wouldn't want to scare you. I'll be prepared, Danzo replied, though his mind was far from calm. As the two continued, a figure descended from the sky, halting in front of Danzo and half knelt. Danzo-sama, the Hokage has arrived. Danzo nodded slightly, waving the subordinate away. I understand. You're dismissed. Seeing the person vanish in a blur of body flicker jutsu, Kizaru knew that Danzo had other matters to attend to. With that, he turned to leave. I'll see you tonight, Uncle Danzo. As Kizaru walked off, Danzo's gaze hardened as he muttered under his breath, the audacity. Danzo couldn't help but be disgusted by the situation. Hiruzen had stolen the Hokage title from him all those years ago, and now he was trying to take his nephew, as well as his disciple's disciple. It was shameless acting righteous on one hand, while being completely self-serving on the other. He could only stare at Hiruzen's smiling face, prepared for any kind of mockery. Yet despite the irritation bubbling inside, Danzo knew that for Kizaru's future, having this shameless old man as his teacher could be beneficial. If Kizaru were under Orochimaru's tutelage, he'd likely be locked in a battle for the 5th Hokage title. But under Hiruzen? Kizaru could be groomed to compete for the 4th Hokage role, potentially becoming the youngest Hokage ever at just 20. Though reluctantly, Danzo couldn't deny that Hiruzen's involvement would be advantageous. Has Orochimaru raised any objections? Despite his inner conflict, Danzo kept his tone cool. Hiruzen puffed on his pipe before responding, no objections. Danzo nodded stiffly, still upset. Then I'll have to defer to the Hokage's decisions. The sarcasm in Danzo's words wasn't lost on Hiruzen, but he only chuckled. Danzo. I'm not trying to steal Orochimaru's disciple. Everything I'm doing is for the village and Kizaru's future. By the way, did you hear? Kizaru defeated Jiraiya yesterday. He sent him to the hospital. Danzo froze. What? Hiruzen, ignoring the subtle shift in Danzo's expression, continued. Yes, despite Jiraiya not using his signature jutsu, it's still impressive. Kizaru handled him easily. He's really something. Danzo, still processing the information, asked, why did Jiraiya attack Kizaru? Hiruzen shrugged, it was my fault. I told Jiraiya about Orochimaru wanting Kizaru as his disciple, and Jiraiya, in his impulsive way, disguised himself as a ninja from another village and attacked Kizaru to test his strength. Danzo's anger flared. Ambushing one of our own? That's unforgivable. I've already scolded him, Hiruzen quickly added. Kizaru injured him badly. He's in the hospital with multiple fractures. Disaster! Danzo exclaimed, his irritation mounting. You know how young people can be. They need guidance, Danzo, Hiruzen continued with a wistful tone, as if trying to steer the conversation away from Jiraiya's blunder. Danzo begrudgingly agreed, yes, we must continue to guide the younger generation. As the two old men reminisced about their shared past, about the times when they faced challenges and victories together, their mutual grumbling about the current youth filled the air. Both lamented how today's young people had it easier and were far less disciplined than they had been in their time. These kids today need more training. Danzo commented. Yes, indeed. They're nowhere near as good as we were. Hiruzen added. With their frustrations vented, the two found some common ground, easing the tension between them. Danzo's anger started to subside. Kizaru is preparing to challenge me tonight. You should come and observe. Consider it an evaluation of your disciple. Hiruzen's interest piqued. Ah, I'd love to. I'll be there tonight. Tonight at 8 p.m. Don't be late, Danzo confirmed. I'm seriously injured. Why do they want me out of the hospital tonight? Lying on the hospital bed and enjoying the attention of a beautiful nurse, Jiraiya groaned to Tsunade and Orochimaru, who were by his side. The old man wants us to get you out, Tsunade said coldly, her arms crossed in annoyance. Tsunade was still fuming over Hiruzen's actions in taking Orochimaru's disciple, which had soured her mood for the day. Does Sarutobi-sensei want me to die? Jiraiya protested angrily. Sarutobi-sensei plans to take Kizaru as his disciple. Tonight, we're going to the Uzumaki clan together, Orochimaru explained patiently. Jiraiya, even more confused, asked, wasn't Kizaru your disciple? How did he become Sarutobi-sensei's? Sarutobi-sensei believes he can easily defeat you, and seeing Kizaru's remarkable talent, he's decided to take him under his wing, Orochimaru added. You fool, you're embarrassing yourself, Tsunade snapped after hearing this, realizing that Jiraiya's actions had led to her own disciple being taken. So it's my fault? Jiraiya asked, pointing at himself with disbelief. Of course. Tsunade shot him a glare. I didn't think that kid was this talented. Jiraiya muttered in frustration. Shut up, stop complaining. Get up, the old man is still waiting for us. With that, Tsunade took action. She grabbed the corner of Jiraiya's blanket, pulling it off, revealing him in bed. Jiraiya quickly moved to cover himself, flustered. What are you doing? Tsunade. How can you just lift my blanket like that? Despite his quick reflexes, Tsunade's sharp eyes caught sight of the book cover. A vein popped on Tsunade's forehead as she narrowed her eyes and prepared to strike. Tsunade, you voyeur! Jiraiya yelled in defense. Seeing the tension rising, Orochimaru quickly stepped in, blocking Tsunade. Calm down, Tsunade. Sarutobi-sensei is waiting for us. Tsunade, somewhat placated by Orochimaru's words, lowered her fist inside. You've only learned the perverted ways of the old man, Tsunade muttered in frustration. Jiraiya, still holding his defensive posture, sighed in relief. You're not willing to be my girlfriend, so what else can I do if I can't read my books? Jiraiya grumbled as he slowly got off the bed. What did you say? Tsunade glared at him. Nothing, nothing. Let's go quickly. Jiraiya replied, eager to move on. Humph. Tsunade snorted, once you're fully recovered, I'll make sure you pay for that. Jiraiya could feel a chill run down his spine, sensing he wasn't long for this world. At 7:40 p.m., after dinner, and a short walk, Kizaru strolled to the edge of the Uzumaki clan's training grounds, hands in his pockets. Uncle, long time no see. Danzo stood in the center of the training ground, already waiting, and Kizaru greeted him with a smile. Get your condition right and don't disappoint me later, Danzo said, lifting his chin slightly as he closed his eyes, enjoying the cool evening breeze. Such an intimidating posture. Kizaru chuckled to himself. Danzo, recalling what Hiruzen had told him about Kizaru defeating Jiraiya, refrained from lecturing him for now. He didn't want to embarrass himself if Kizaru performed well in their upcoming battle. Danzo sighed in silence, relaxing his furrowed brow. As Kizaru warmed up at the edge of the field, he asked, Uncle, do we have to wait until 8 p.m.? Yes, Danzo replied shortly. There's been a slight change in your instructing teacher. Oh. Kizaru asked, surprised but unfazed. The third Hokage is planning to take you as his disciple and personally teach you, Danzo explained. Wow, it looks like I'm quite popular. Kizaru said with a smile. Tonight, during our battle, Hiruzen will be bringing his 3 disciples to watch, Danzo added. What big names. I'm getting nervous just thinking about it. Kizaru said, smiling. Nervous? I doubt that, Danzo muttered under his breath, noticing the provocation in Kizaru's tone. Be careful with your attitude later. Danzo warned. Such a difficult request. Kizaru replied. Why does he have to be so annoying? Danzo sighed internally. Haha, I hope I'm not late, Hiruzen called out as he approached, accompanied by 3 ninjas. Right on time. Danzo responded, glancing at Hiruzen. Uncle, I heard you are going to be my teacher. Kizaru asked, smiling at Hiruzen. Do you want me to be your teacher? Hiruzen replied, grinning. Good evening, sensei. Kizaru greeted him with enthusiasm. Ha ha ha. You're a fine child. Hiruzen laughed joyously. Danzo, on the other hand, muttered, "Two shameless men. Tsunade, shameless. Orochimaru. Jiraiya. Now that we're all here, let's begin the assessment. Kizaru, are you ready?" Danzo said, unable to hold back. "Scary. So scary, uncle." Kizaru made a mock-scared expression as he walked toward Danzo. "I'm not like Jiraiya or Danzo." "Show me all your strength," Danzo said firmly. As soon as he spoke, the others turned their gaze toward Jiraiya. Danzo's statement carried a heavy air of provocation, challenging Kizaru to show his full potential. "Watch your tone," Danzo warned. "What a difficult request." Kizaru grinned. "Why is this kid so infuriating?" Danzo thought to himself, silently sighing. As the tension built, the battle was about to begin, and Kizaru took a few steps back, preparing for what would come next. "Come on. Let me see the surprise you've been preparing." Danzo stood firmly, his hands at his sides, a sharp gaze fixed on Kizaru. His tone remained calm, almost detached. "All right, just wait and see, uncle." Kizaru replied confidently. Without hesitation, he formed hand seals, releasing a rush of wind release chakra from his mouth. Wind release, vacuum serial wave. Sharp, serpentine winds surged towards Danzo. Danzo, however, didn't retreat. Instead, he advanced, swiftly performing the body flicker jutsu to dodge the oncoming wind attacks. With the kunai drawn, he infused it with wind release chakra, preparing for the next strike. In a blink, he was beside Kizaru, taking advantage of the distraction caused by the wind serpents. He swung the kunai downward with deadly precision. Not one to be caught off guard, Kizaru executed a backflip, putting a safe distance between himself and Danzo. "If that's all you have, I'm afraid you won't pass my test." Danzo stood his ground, kunai raised, and spoke without any urgency, focusing on Kizaru as he recovered from the backflip. Kizaru remained calm, an amused smile on his face. "You're rushing things, uncle. That was just the warm-up." "Just a warm-up." Hiruzen, who had been watching from the sidelines, couldn't help but marvel at Kizaru's ability to use such advanced wind release techniques at his young age. His curiosity was now piqued even more. "Then show me your real power," Danzo shouted as he sprang into action. He rapidly formed hand seals, using wind release, vacuum sphere. Sharp, transparent wind bullets shot from his mouth, targeting Kizaru. But Kizaru's response was just as swift. He too used the body flicker jutsu, vanishing into the air and becoming a streak of light, speeding toward Danzo. This was the first time Danzo had witnessed Kizaru using a bloodline limit in combat. Kizaru's speed was so overwhelming that before Danzo's brain could process the situation, the light was already upon him. That technique. Jiraiya, recognizing the attack from previous encounters, stood in shock. Orochimaru and Tsunade, who had also seen it before, exchanged knowing glances, excitement in their eyes. Danzo, blindsided by the blinding light, felt his vision blur and his eyes sting with pain. Tears involuntarily streamed down his face. "Ever been kicked by light, uncle?" Kizaru grinned, continuing his relentless assault. He gathered photons on his shin and kicked out at Danzo's side with incredible speed. Danzo, sensing the incoming blow, immediately reacted, using the body flicker jutsu to dodge. His body shifted just as the light-speed kick collided with a nearby wooden post, splintering it into countless pieces. "Impressive reaction time, uncle," Kizaru said with a smile as he observed the shattered wood. "Why am I being dragged into this?" Jiraiya groaned, caught in the middle of the exchange, feeling the weight of Sarutobi's and the others' gaze. Sarutobi, ignoring Jiraiya's comment, watched Kizaru intently, admiration growing within him. So much talent. The more he observed, the more he was impressed. A genuine smile spread across his face. Similarly, Danzo, despite the initial surprise, was pleased by Kizaru's performance. The combination of his bloodline limit and rapid movements showed he was far stronger than expected. It seemed that Kizaru wasn't arrogant, but instead had indeed grown considerably. "What a fine child. Truly the heir I've chosen." Though his mind was pleased, Danzo kept a cold, stern expression as he prepared for the next exchange. Using a shadow clone to dodge, Danzo repositioned himself, his eyes closing momentarily. "Why did you speak just now? When an enemy's eyes are blinded, your voice can give away your location," Had you stayed silent, I could have. Before Danzo could finish his sentence, Kizaru quickly attacked, landing a sharp blow to his arm. Danzo grunted in pain. Kizaru stood smiling, his right hand extended, glowing with golden light. Noted, uncle. He said playfully, before pointing his finger again, shooting a concentrated laser directly at Danzo. Kizaru remained silent as he shot multiple lasers at Danzo, targeting his arms and legs with precision, though none aimed for fatal strikes. Bane. The lasers struck, only to find Danzo's form was replaced with a pile of wood. Another shadow clone. Kizaru remarked, unfazed. Indeed, uncle. Just as Kizaru spoke, a figure descended from above, wielding a wind kunao and preparing to strike. Without turning, Kizaru sensed the incoming attack and spun, his right leg flashing with golden light as he delivered a devastating spinning kick. The kick hit Danzo just before the wind kunao could make contact. Bane. Danzo's form behind Kizaru shattered into white mist. Shadow clone. Kizaru deduced immediately, his eyes scanning the surroundings for Danzo's real location. Just as Kizaru scanned, a wind release kunao flew from the right, aimed straight at him. Kizaru responded with another lightspeed kick, unleashing a laser slash to intercept the incoming weapon. The two attacks collided with a powerful explosion, lifting dust and debris into the air. How intimidating, uncle. Kizaru grinned, hands casually in his pockets, as his smile grew even wider. Watching the dust rise in front of him, Kizaru bent his knees, leapt into the air, and delivered another shining kick, sending a golden slash forward. The slash cut through the smoke created by the dust, continued soaring, and flew into the woods where the kunao had previously been shot. Another explosion echoed, and the smoke rose again, covering the trees and grass on Kizaru's right side. Uncle, are you still hiding? Landing on the ground, Kizaru shouted. Whoosh. In response to Kizaru, two wind release kunao flew toward him from two directions. Emerging from the smoke, the kunao rushed towards Kizaru. Remaining calm with his hands in his pockets, Kizaru lifted his glowing right leg and kicked again. The golden slash flew out, intercepting the two wind release kunao. After the slash, Kizaru stared at the smoke ahead, formed hand seals, and cast wind release, vacuum great sphere. A transparent wind ball, as tall as a person, shot out from Kizaru's mouth, rushing toward the smoke. As it cleared the smoke, it continued its path. Like a giant shredder, the wind ball tore through the woods, uprooting trees, and crushing everything in its path. Seeing such a wide-reaching attack, Danzo, who had been hiding in the woods, was forced to reveal himself. With his vision somewhat restored, Danzo leapt out of the wind ball's path and landed on a patch of disturbed earth. Gasping for breath, his arm injured, his eyes damaged, and his clothes in tatters, Danzo appeared quite disheveled. On the sidelines, watching the battle, Hiruzen and the young legendary Sunin were stunned by Kizaru's performance. That kid didn't go all out last time either. Jiraiya, with a bitter smile, had always believed he lost because he went easy to hide his true abilities, but he was amazed to realize that Kizaru hadn't used his full power either. My student is truly terrifyingly talented. Jiraiya was overwhelmed with emotion. Orochimaru and Tsunade, standing beside him, were also shocked by Kizaru's display. With intense light techniques, superior wind release ninjutsu, and a powerful bloodline limit unseen before in the ninja world. Is this child really only 6 years old? This question lingered in everyone's minds. This is just too abnormal, isn't it? He's practically a monster. Unlike the three disciples who saw more, Hiruzen, with his wealth of experience, observed even deeper. Combining the bloodline limit known as light release with flawless taijutsu, this child possessed top-tier talent in both taijutsu and ninjutsu. Such aptitude could mark him as a potential Hokage. Reflecting on the golden slash Kizaru had just unleashed, Hiruzen couldn't help but marvel at the child's capabilities. If this child continues to grow and embraces the ideals of the Hokage, the village will be secure for decades to come. Thinking of this, Hiruzen looked forward to Kizaru and the future of the village. While pleased, Hiruzen also felt a heavy weight. Such a rare and brilliant talent cannot be allowed to go astray under his watch. Just as Hiruzen fell into deep thought, Danzo, who was in a miserable state, spoke up to end the battle. That's enough. Watching Kizaru, who was still smiling casually with his hands in his pockets, Danzo had to admit that the child's performance tonight had genuinely surprised him. What a surprise. With a stern expression, Danzo walked back into the training ground and approached Kizaru. Seeing Kizaru's relaxed and dignified smile, Danzo's tightly pursed lips curved slightly, and for once, a rare smile appeared on his face. Shimura Kizaru. Danzo stressed the Shimura part deliberately, mainly for someone on the sidelines to hear. Your performance tonight was impressive, and you've passed my assessment. Eh? Well, thank you, uncle. Kizaru replied. Raising his hand, Danzo gave Kizaru a gentle pat on the shoulder. Your performance truly startled me. For the first time, seeing Danzo praise him so openly, Kizaru was slightly surprised. Lowering his gaze to Danzo, noticing the bloodstains and injuries on his arms and his reddened, teary eyes, Kizaru turned his attention to the sidelines. Big sister Tsunade, could you please help uncle with his injuries? Tsunade, who didn't particularly like Danzo, hesitated for a moment but agreed at Kizaru's first request. Bring him here. Thanks, big sister Tsunade. Kizaru said with a smile. Not wasting any time, Kizaru grabbed Danzo's uninjured arm and walked him over to the sidelines. Let go. Danzo, feeling embarrassed, quickly shouted. Kizaru, not bothering with the prideful and stubborn attitude, used his impressive strength to pull Danzo to the sidelines and then released him. I'm counting on you, big sister. Kizaru said with a smile, facing Tsunade. Got it. Tsunade responded, albeit unenthusiastically, and walked toward Danzo. Looking at the blood-soaked bandages on Danzo's right arm, Tsunade wasted no time and ripped the tattered bandage off without hesitation. Underneath, the extent of the injury on his arm was clearly visible. Tisk tisk. Seeing the serious injury, Tsunade sighed. Hiruzen, standing nearby, approached to look at the wound on his friend's arm, a smirk tugging at his lips. Really dangerous ninjutsu. Hiruzen remarked, then added, must be painful, Danzo. Shut up. Danzo shot a glare at Hiruzen. I'm just concerned for you. Hiruzen defended himself. Quiet, both of you. Tsunade, who had started treatment, yelled. Her words echoed through the area, and both Hiruzen and Danzo fell silent. Turning her gaze from Danzo's wound, Hiruzen looked over at Kizaru. I heard you plan to challenge the Uchiha clan's Jonin in your graduation assessment. They were too noisy, annoying me, so I had to shut them up. Nodding, Hiruzen didn't pursue the matter and continued, as Hokage, I approve of your request. I'll arrange for a Uchiha clan Jonin to take part in your graduation assessment. Kizaru was already his disciple, and seeing his immense talent, how could those Uchiha dare to question his disciple? Well, thank you, sensei. Kizaru replied contentedly. I'll announce your official status as my disciple during the graduation assessment for the entire village. As he spoke, Hiruzen placed a hand on Kizaru's shoulder. Kizaru nodded in understanding. Early in the morning at the Ninja Academy, within the first grade elite class, the students settled in their seats. Some quietly conversed, others snacked, and a few had already begun dozing off, their heads resting on the desks. Swish. The door creaked open, and everyone assumed it was the teacher. They immediately fell silent, their gazes shifting toward the entrance. Hatch. With his left hand stuffed in his pocket, and the other ruffling his messy hair, Kizaru strolled in, still yawning from his sleep. His groggy presence drew the attention of the class. When the students saw Kizaru, a hush fell over the room before a buzz of conversation erupted. Kizaru's decision to take on the Uchiha clan's Jonin during his early graduation assessment had already spread throughout the village. The idea of a 6-year-old challenging a Jonin, especially one from the prestigious Uchiha clan, was beyond extraordinary. It was unheard of and had raised both admiration and concern. Kizaru, already challenging a Jonin at his age, was a shock, but targeting the Uchiha clan specifically? It was downright intimidating. Most students came from ninja families, so they understood just how difficult Kizaru's challenge was. As they reflected on the gravity of his decision, their reactions varied. Some were jealous and believed Kizaru would be humbled by the Uchiha clan, others found his audacity impressive, and some, like Hyaga Toda, felt slighted by Kizaru's choice. Toda, proud of his Hyaga heritage, felt personally insulted by Kizaru's decision to face the Uchiha clan rather than the Hyaga clan, which he considered the strongest in Konoha. He was so frustrated that he loudly declared to his father, an elder in the main branch, that he would confront Kizaru and challenge him to reconsider, ideally by fighting the Hyaga clan directly. Toda's father, perplexed by his son's bold declaration, responded with exasperation, promptly giving him a few firm slaps, wondering why his intelligent son would bring such unnecessary attention to their clan. Meanwhile, Toda, unaware of his father's disappointment, felt misunderstood but humbly apologized, though he didn't grasp the full extent of his father's frustration. Toda sat rigidly in his seat now, glaring at Kizaru as he entered. The intense stare caught Kizaru's attention, and he felt the weight of it as he walked through the classroom. Approaching his seat by the window, Kizaru paused as he passed Toda. "Toda, got something to say?" Kizaru asked, looking down at the boy. Toda, clenching his fists, struggled to hold back the words he wanted to say, remembering his father's reprimands. Still, he stood up, face flushed with determination, and declared loudly, "Kizaru, I know the Uchiha clan isn't a challenge for you. I'll train hard to catch up to you and be a worthy opponent." The classroom fell silent again. Everyone knew about the rivalry between the Uchiha and Hyuga clans, but it was rare for someone like Toda to openly mock the Uchiha clan in such a manner. The tension in the room escalated when Inabi, a member of the Uchiha clan, couldn't hold back any longer. He leapt to his feet and shouted, "Toda, you little brat, are you trying to provoke my clan? You talk too much." Toda snapped back, activating his Byakugan as he mocked Inabi. "What do you think you're going to do, huh? You haven't even awakened your Shuriken yet." Inabi, boiling with rage, clenched his fists, his entire body trembling. He stared daggers at Toda, his breath heavy, but as he readied himself to act, a sudden sharp pain surged through his eyes. "Ah!" Inabi yelped, clutching his eyes in agony. "Are you all right, Inabi?" Minato, seated nearby, quickly stood up in concern, moving to help him. Kizaru watched the scene with surprise, not understanding the full implications of what had just occurred. He looked between Inabi, who was now crying out from the pain, and Toda, who had begun to show some regret for his words. To Kizaru's astonishment, Toda's sharp tongue had unintentionally triggered Inabi's Shuriken awakening. Inabi, still in pain but recovering, slowly peeled his hands from his face, his Shuriken now fully open. His eyes, bloodshot and intense, met Toda's with a mixture of pride and anger. "Look what you did," Kizaru muttered under his breath, impressed by the strange turn of events. Toda, though clearly stunned, tried to maintain his composure. As he watched Inabi now staring at him through his newly awakened Shuriken, he couldn't help but feel an odd sense of both frustration and accomplishment. You. Toda stared, stunned, at Inabi, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Inabi, sporting a grin of triumph, placed his hands on his hips and declared, "Thanks to you, Hinata, my Shuriken is now awakened." The words hit like a thunderclap, causing the once quiet classroom to erupt in shock. "That's impossible." Toda couldn't fathom how he had inadvertently helped Inabi unlock the Shuriken, shaking his head in disbelief. Pointing proudly at his eyes, Inabi boasted, "At just 6 years old, I've awakened my eyes. Now, I have every right to speak to you, Hyuga Toda." Toda's frustration built, ready to retort, but suddenly, a tap on his shoulder interrupted him. Turning instinctively, he saw Kizaru, who smiled warmly and calmly said, "Toda, please take your seat. It's time for class." "Right." Toda responded absent-mindedly and took his seat. Only when he sat did he realize he wanted to say something to Kizaru but swallowed his words in silence. "Haha, Hinata." Inabi chuckled. "Inabi, please take your seat as well." Kizaru interrupted, his smile unwavering. The powerful aura from Kizaru caused Inabi to hold his tongue, and with visible reluctance, he sat down. "Thank you," Kizaru said with a grin, appreciative of Inabi's compliance. With the class now in order, Kizaru casually walked to his desk, a pleased expression on his face. "Achoo." Inabi stretched lazily and sneezed, about to lean back in his seat, when a voice from the front broke the silence. "Your momentum is growing stronger," Shikaku said, his eyes still closed, lounging in his seat. "Just a little." Inabi smiled, making a playful hand gesture. Shikaku, rolling his eyes, ignored him and went back to his resting position. Inabi followed suit, leaning on the desk and preparing to nap. When Kiyoshi entered the room, he was surprised to see the two in the back row already asleep, but quickly understood. Without a word, Kiyoshi grabbed a piece of chalk, throwing it expertly at Shikaku's head. "Shikaku, get up and go to the back." Kiyoshi's loud voice filled the room. Shikaku sighed, stood up, and muttered to Inabi, who was still dozing, you better hurry up and graduate. Inabi, without lifting his head, casually raised his hand and gave an okay gesture before letting it fall back down. Kiyoshi, seeing Inabi's indifference, sighed deeply but took his place at the front. Let's begin class, he announced, brushing aside Inabi's lack of attention. Inabi, Inabi. A voice called softly, pulling Inabi from his dreamlike state. Raising his head from the desk and supporting his chin with his hand, he scanned the room. A warm smile greeted him as Minato apologized for the disturbance, a bit embarrassed. I'm sorry for waking you up, Inabi, Minato said, rubbing his head. Inabi sneezed again, not responding right away, as he gazed out the window, calculating how much time had passed. It's the third period. Everyone's on the field now, and we'll break for lunch soon, Minato said, understanding what Inabi was thinking. Anything up, Minato? Inabi flashed a grin, curious. I've heard from Yoshihiko that you train at the training grounds every day after school. Minato hesitated slightly. Could I join you after school to train, Inabi? Minato nervously tugged at his pants, hoping his request wasn't too sudden. This wasn't an impulsive thought. Minato had spent days weighing it. As an orphan with dreams of becoming Hokage, Minato had realized that his skills fell behind those from prestigious families and ninja clans. Without access to high-level training or family guidance, Minato was doing his best but found his grades only average. For someone with ambitions as big as his, that was simply not enough. Minato sought Kizaru out, not expecting to learn any secret jutsu but simply hoping that training with someone stronger would help him grow. When Kizaru didn't respond immediately, Minato quickly clarified, I won't take up much of your time. I just want to train with you. Kizaru smiled, finally answering, of course. It works out well. Yoshihiko has been pestering me for a while. After school, both of you can join me for training. Minato's face lit up with a wide, grateful smile. Thank you, Kizaru, he said, bowing deeply in appreciation. Kizaru smiled back, happy to help. His decision to agree had two reasons. First, knowing Minato's potential as the future Hokage, he wanted to nurture the connection, especially given his ties to the Shimura clan. Second, hearing Minato's request sparked an idea about the little son in the class and a new arranged jutsu he could teach. Raise non, combined with a laser, that'll be an amusing sight, Kizaru thought, a mischievous grin crossing his face. Minato's training journey was about to take a turn. After school in the afternoon, by the school entrance, Yoshihiko stood just behind Kizaru, his eyes frequently shifting to Kizaru's side, where Minato was. This is ridiculous. When I asked to train with Big Brother before, he refused, but today, Minato asks and Big Brother agrees right away. Yoshihiko muttered angrily to himself. What makes this guy so special that Big Brother treats him so well? This is frustrating. As Yoshihiko grumbled, Yuki and Shinobu, who had finished class a little later, approached the school gate. What's got you so worked up? Yuki asked as she caught up with him. TCH. Yoshihiko rolled his eyes and glanced up at the sky in annoyance. Seeing Yoshihiko sulking, Yuki didn't feel like engaging with him. She picked up her pace and headed straight for Kizaru. Big Brother Kizaru, she called out with a warm, cheerful smile. Everyone's here. Let's head out. I'll train with you all today, Kizaru said with a smile, reaching out to ruffle Yuki's hair. Training together? Yuki was caught off guard, her heart bubbling with happiness. This was a pleasant surprise. She restrained her excitement, however, and managed to keep a composed, gentle smile. This is Minato, my classmate. He'll be joining our training from now on, Kizaru added, making sure to introduce Minato properly. Hello, Minato-senpai. I'm Shimura Yuki. It's a pleasure to meet you. Yuki greeted him politely, though her smile tightened a little. When did this blondie show up? Yuki thought to herself as she processed the new introduction. It was now clear to her why Yoshihiko had been muttering earlier. Hello, Yuki. Minato greeted with a friendly smile. It's getting late, let's go. Yoshihiko, Shinobu, get yourselves ready. Kizaru called out as he led the group away from the school gate. Since this was Minato's first time training with them, and he wasn't yet familiar with the Shimura clan's grounds, Kizaru decided not to take them to their usual training spot. Instead, he chose a place behind the Hokage rock, closer to the school. The group made their way toward the training area, with Kizaru leading the way. Shinobu, ever polite, walked alongside Minato, while Yoshihiko, in an unusual twist, walked with Yuki. The two kids at the back exchanged glances but said nothing. Their eyes, however, spoke volumes. When did this guy show up? Why is big brother Kizaru being so nice to him? Yoshihiko thought, while Yuki silently agreed. I don't know. Yuki replied in her mind. What do you mean you don't know? Yoshihiko huffed. I don't know anything. Yuki retorted, her voice a little sharper. Idiot. Yuki muttered, unable to keep her frustration in check. Do you want to fight? Yoshihiko snapped back, his annoyance clear. Humph. Yuki quickened her pace and caught up to Kizaru, deciding to take his right hand. Yoshihiko, even more frustrated by this, stamped his foot and ran forward, grabbing Kizaru's left hand. Humph. Both of them huffed simultaneously, each determined not to back down. Minato, following behind, smiled, though he was slightly puzzled by the dynamic between the two. They do this a lot, don't mind them, Shinobu explained with a knowing smile. Wow, you all have such a close relationship, Minato commented, his tone carrying a hint of envy. Shinobu wanted to sigh but held back, realizing she shouldn't reveal too much about family matters. Yes, it's like that, Shinobu replied with a polite but slightly awkward smile. The brief spat didn't disrupt their journey, and after a short while, they reached the training ground behind the Hokage rock. Yoshihiko, warm everyone up. Kizaru ordered. Got it, big brother Kizaru. Yoshihiko puffed his chest proudly, ready to take charge. As Yoshihiko started the warm-up, Kizaru stood thinking. What kind of training should they do? The kids had been refining their chakra and getting stronger for a year now, but Minato was still catching up, as he hadn't received preschool guidance like the others. After some thought, Kizaru decided on physical training. Once everyone had finished warming up, Kizaru clapped his hands to get their attention. For today's training, let's play a little game. He announced with a grin. A game. The four kids looked at him in confusion. Kizaru didn't answer but instead pointed his index finger, which suddenly gleamed with golden light. A laser shot out from his finger, hitting a large tree with a loud crash. The kids watched in stunned silence as the laser caused the tree to fall. After a moment, their shock faded, replaced by admiration for Kizaru. Big brother Kizaru, are you going to teach us ninjutsu? Yoshihiko asked eagerly, stepping forward. Kizaru shook his head and smiled. No, I'll be shooting lasers at you. What? Yoshihiko's confusion was clear. Ever played dodgeball? Kizaru grinned. Today, we're playing dodgeball, but with lasers. I'll shoot, and you dodge. The kids exchanged nervous looks, then glanced at the tree that had just been hit. Yoshihiko gulped and cautiously asked, Big brother Kizaru, isn't this a bit too dangerous? With a reassuring smile, Kizaru said, Don't worry, I'll control the power. You won't end up disabled. The mention of disabled sent a chill through the group, especially Shinobu, who trembled slightly. Big brother Kizaru. Shinobu began, but Kizaru cut her off. Let's get started. He aimed his finger at Yoshihiko with a wide grin. Fear struck Yoshihiko, and he instantly dodged to the left, barely avoiding the laser. He quickly hid behind Yuki, who glared at him. You jerk. Yuki hissed, moving swiftly away from Yoshihiko. The four kids started scrambling around, dodging the lasers, as Kizaru looked on, his smile growing even brighter. This is really fun. He exclaimed. Kizaru manipulated the size of his laser, continuously firing thin beams from the tip of his index finger. These beams were incredibly weak, causing only a mild sting unless they struck vital spots, meaning the four young trainees would be fine as long as they didn't get hit in critical areas. There were two main reasons for using this dodgeball style evasion training. First, Kizaru wanted to assess Minato's neural response speed, testing if it was as remarkable as rumored. Secondly, the exercise would help the group improve their reaction times and physical endurance. Following Kizaru's instructions, they weren't allowed to take cover during the exercise. They had to keep dodging while standing in the open field, a task that made them look somewhat embarrassed. Minato, who received the most attention from Kizaru, appeared to struggle the most from an outsider's point of view. However, Kizaru, who kept an eye on him, noticed that Minato was hit less often than the others. Minato's talent for rapid neural responses was impressive. The training went on for about half an hour, and as the session neared its end, Kizaru saw that the group was clearly exhausted, with Minato being the most drained, almost completely out of energy. Kizaru flicked his right index finger to his mouth and blew out, extinguishing the golden light at its tip. Game over. Kizaru called out. Hearing his words, the four collapsed, breathing heavily. Kizaru approached each of them, lifting them from the ground before standing at the center to continue speaking. Yoshihiko, you were hit 15 times. Yoshihiko perked up at the mention of his name, eager for feedback. Yuki, you were hit 12 times. Yuki flashed a smile at Kizaru and took the opportunity to tease Yoshihiko. Shinobu, you were hit 15 times. Shinobu lowered his gaze, disappointment clear in his eyes. Minato, you were hit only 9 times, Kizaru continued, pausing to flash Minato an encouraging smile. Well done. You were hit the least. Yoshihiko and Shinobu, who had both been downcast, looked up at Minato in surprise. Minato smiled awkwardly, rubbing the back of his head as he met their gaze. Yuki, who had been silently watching, clenched her hands and, though she didn't look at Minato, made a mental note to aim for first place next time to earn Kizaru's praise. Once Kizaru finished sharing his observations, he looked over the group again before speaking further. Especially you, Minato. Your reaction time is excellent, so make sure to continue developing it. However, your stamina needs some work, so focus on that too. Minato beamed with gratitude and nodded, understanding what he needed to improve. Yoshihiko and Shinobu, while your performance was a bit lacking, the issues differ. Shinobu, your response speed isn't slow, but your physical fitness and explosive power need improvement. You should work on that. Yoshihiko, your physical conditioning is strong, but your reaction time is a bit sluggish. Focus on that. I'll train hard, big brother Kizaru. Yoshihiko replied determinedly. I understand, big brother Kizaru, Shinobu nodded seriously. Turning to Yuki next, Kizaru smiled. Yuki, your performance was quite good, but like Shinobu, you need to work on your explosive power. Practice with Shinobu, and you'll improve. Yuki nodded without speaking, her determination clear. Once the evaluations were complete, Kizaru addressed the group as a whole. Now, you can start your individual practice. As the others began their exercises, Kizaru singled out Yoshihiko and said, Yoshihiko, practice with Minato. Yoshihiko, though a bit awkward, nodded and said, understood, big brother Kizaru. He then approached Minato to begin their joint training. With everyone now practicing, Kizaru stretched lazily and began his own training as well. Meanwhile, there was a commotion at the Uchiha clan's residence. The reason for the stir was simple, 6-year-old Uchiha Nanao had just unlocked his shuriken. Awakening the shuriken at such a young age was an extraordinary feat in the Uchiha clan, so news of Inao's achievement quickly spread, and the clan elders rushed to his family's home. Surrounded by the elders, Inao proudly demonstrated his newly awakened shuriken. Our clan has produced another genius. I always knew Inao had great potential. Indeed, he's remarkable. Amid the praises and the joyous laughter from his parents, Inao beamed with happiness. To a 6-year-old, the praise of his family and elders was the best reward. One of the elders, curious, asked, Inao, how did you awaken your shuriken? Inao opened his mouth to respond but hesitated. How had he awakened it? He'd been provoked by that Hokage kid. A blush crept onto his face, embarrassed about the way he triggered his shuriken, and he almost didn't want to share the story. But with all the eager eyes on him, Inao reluctantly spoke. This morning, my classmate Toda from the Hokage clan taunted me. I got really mad and activated it. A few awkward moments passed before Inao, face flushed, lowered his gaze. Activated it out of anger. The Uchiha elders exchanged glances in astonishment. What did that Toda say? Someone asked. He challenged Kizaru, saying the Uchiha clan couldn't compare to him and that he alone was worthy, Inao said. The proud Uchiha clan members' expressions darkened with anger upon hearing this. Inao, I was furious, so I stood up to him. Then, he activated his Byakugan and said I wasn't qualified to talk to him because I hadn't awakened my shuriken yet. He said I was just a kid. Silence fell over the crowd as the elders absorbed Inao's words. The Uchiha clan members were stunned by the arrogance of the Hokage child. Time passed swiftly, and before anyone knew it, 2 weeks had gone by. During this period, there were no significant events at school or in the village, apart from a small occurrence. It involved the parents of Uchiha Inabi and an elder from the Uchiha clan visiting the Hyuga household to express their thanks. The elder of the Uchiha clan wore a bright smile, sincerely thanking Hyuga Toda and his father. He enthusiastically invited Toda to engage with the younger members of the Uchiha clan and encouraged him to boldly pursue his path toward greatness. After conveying his gratitude, the elder took his leave from the Hyuga family. Later that evening, the Hyuga household was filled with loud voices as family members discussed the visit. The following day, a senior member of the Hyuga clan appeared in Kizaru's class, requesting a 3-day leave for his younger cousin, who had recently been recovering. This news immediately brightened the mood of the entire class, and many students, especially Inabi, looked happier than ever. The topic of Inabi awakening his shuriken at the age of 6 began to spread throughout the village and quickly became a popular subject of discussion, alongside the ongoing talks about Kizaru's challenge to the Uchiha clan. Some members of the Uchiha clan even claimed that Inabi's potential and talent surpassed Kizaru's, predicting a swift rise for him in the future. Upon hearing these comments, Inabi felt embarrassed and subtly rejected the praise in his mind. For days, whenever he saw Kizaru at school, he made an effort to avoid him. However, Inabi's concerns were unfounded. Kizaru paid little attention to the rumors, spending his days attending school, training with his team in the afternoon, and working on his raise-non technique at night. Under Kizaru's guidance, the bond between Yoshihiko and Minato deepened. After school, Minato often joined Kizaru and the others at the Shimura clan's residence. There, they would train together, have meals, and spend the evening bonding. Kizaru and Minato's closeness drew the attention of Danzo, who had been observing Minato's training with keen interest. After several secretive observations, Danzo noted Minato's impressive talent and began formulating his own ideas. Kizaru, that kid from the Namikaze family is quite impressive. I want to bring him in and cultivate his abilities, Danzo remarked. Kizaru, who had been sipping tea leisurely, nearly choked on his drink. That's a rather frightening proposition, he replied, setting the cup down with a sigh. Unperturbed, Danzo continued, you have a good sense of judgment. His talent is certainly worth nurturing. With a look of disbelief, Kizaru thought to himself how short-sighted his uncle was. His mentor, Hiruzen, recruited people with kindness and genuine care, making them feel valued. But Danzo? He was much more blunt and ruthless, approaching recruitment as a harsh, no-nonsense operation. Uncle, please don't bring up such alarming ideas again. It's terrifying. Kizaru groaned with an exaggerated grimace. Danzo, displeased, scowled and retorted, don't let emotions cloud your judgment. Uncle, your ideas are better suited for covert operations. They're far too obvious to be effective out in the open, Kizaru quipped, half mocking. At this, Danzo's frustration reached its peak. Do you have any better suggestions? He asked sarcastically. With a grin, Kizaru replied, just take a page from my teacher's book. First, win their hearts before trying to win their loyalty. A sour feeling rose within Danzo's chest as he realized Kizaru was referring to Hiruzen, and for some reason, that irritated him. Danzo stood abruptly, his face stiff. Then you can just listen to Hiruzen. I don't care anymore, he snapped before storming toward the door. Uncle, please wait. Kizaru called out as he picked up his teacup, his tone casually teasing. Danzo paused, already halfway out the door. He turned back to face Kizaru, who, with a smile, casually suggested, if you really admire Minato, just adopt him as your son. Danzo considered the suggestion. Minato's abilities were undeniably exceptional, but the idea of adopting him made Danzo uncomfortable. I'll think about it myself, he muttered, stiffly walking out of the room. Kizaru waved him off with a grin. No need to bother with a farewell, uncle. Goodbye. As Danzo exited the house, frustration began to build up. He had initially come to speak with Kizaru about something important but had gotten sidetracked by their earlier conversation. Realizing his mistake, he reluctantly turned back. Ah, uncle, we meet again, Kizaru teased as he continued trimming his nails, clearly enjoying the moment. Damn, this kid's insufferable, Danzo muttered under his breath. Is something wrong? Kizaru smirked, sensing Danzo's irritation. Danzo, now back in the room, let out an exasperated sigh. Hiruzen asked me to tell you to meet him at Hokage Rock tomorrow afternoon after school. He has some ninjutsu materials he wants to give you. Kizaru's eyes lit up in mock appreciation. What a great teacher. Don't you think so, uncle? Danzo, feeling a twinge of bitterness, didn't respond to the remark. Instead, he stiffened his expression and continued, when you meet Hiruzen tomorrow, make sure you conduct yourself appropriately. Don't disgrace the Shimura family's reputation. Such a hassle, Kizaru sighed dramatically. But I'll go anyway. Danzo shot him an irritated glance before turning to leave once more, his frustration building. The next day, after school, Kizaru allowed Minato and the others to proceed to the clan's training ground alone, while he made his way toward Hokage Rock. The agreed meeting place was just below Hokage Rock, and Kizaru, unhurried, strolled up the stairs, eventually reaching the observation platform at the top. At that moment, Hiruzen had not yet arrived, leaving the platform empty. Leaning casually against the railing, Kizaru gazed into the sky, lost in thought as he waited for Hiruzen. After a few minutes, the sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, and Hiruzen, his pipe in hand, appeared at the top of the stairs. Upon hearing the approach, Kizaru placed both hands on the railing and turned to see Hiruzen. Sensei, long time no see? Kizaru greeted with a wave and a smile. Taking the pipe from his mouth, Hiruzen smiled and nodded, walking over at a slightly quicker pace. I hope I didn't keep you waiting too long, Kizaru. I just arrived. Kizaru replied. As Hiruzen reached his side, he looked ahead, observing the village behind them. In his heart, Hiruzen saw Kizaru as the future hope of the village, someone who would certainly grow to be its pillar. His gaze softened, though a sense of determination remained deep within him. I heard from Danzo that you have a strong interest in genjutsu and sealing techniques, Hiruzen began, sparking the conversation. Yeah, Kizaru responded with a nod. From his pocket, Hiruzen retrieved 2 scrolls and handed them to Kizaru. These contain the basics of genjutsu and sealing techniques. Take them and study them carefully. Looking at his teacher, Kizaru couldn't help but feel a deep respect for Hiruzen's understanding of people, something his distant uncle lacked. Thank you very much, Sarutobi-sensei. Kizaru expressed sincerely, taking the scrolls. With a gentle smile, Hiruzen replied, as a teacher, it's only right to meet the needs of my disciple. No need for thanks in the future, Kizaru. Kizaru nodded, placing the scrolls neatly away. Then, I won't hold back in the future, sensei. Ha ha ha. Hiruzen laughed, his eyes twinkling with amusement. That's the best attitude. However, after the laughter, Hiruzen's expression grew more serious. In addition to the scrolls, there's something I'd like to discuss with you. Kizaru remained quiet, waiting for his teacher to continue. I know you're eager to learn, but human energy is limited. I think that, instead of focusing so much on genjutsu and sealing techniques, your bloodline limit holds far greater potential for development. Hiruzen had been wanting to bring this up with Kizaru for some time, especially after Danzo mentioned Kizaru's interest in the aforementioned fields. But fearing the young boy might be too prideful or resistant to his advice, Hiruzen decided to first give him something of value in the form of the scrolls. This would help establish a stronger rapport before he offered any suggestions. Kizaru, understanding the intent behind Hiruzen's words, responded with maturity. He knew that his teacher's advice came from a place of goodwill. I'm really sorry, sensei. Perhaps my uncle gave you the wrong impression. My goal isn't to specialize in genjutsu or sealing techniques. I'm only learning them to expand my knowledge and prevent myself from being caught off guard in the future. That way, I'll be prepared if I face ninjas who specialize in those techniques. Hiruzen was taken aback. He had expected resistance from the young boy, but instead, he was impressed by Kizaru's foresight and self-awareness. What an extraordinary child, Hiruzen thought, both moved and amazed by his student's mature approach. After a brief pause, Hiruzen spoke again, it seems I overestimated the situation. You already possess the mentality of a skilled ninja. Well, I'll happily accept your praise, sensei. Kizaru said, beaming with a smile. Ha ha ha. Hiruzen laughed heartily, even more so than before. This isn't flattery, it's the truth. Kizaru, encouraged by Hiruzen's words, decided to share something he had been working on recently. Sensei, I've recently created a new ninjutsu. Could you guide me through it? Oh. Hiruzen's interest piqued at Kizaru's words. He had always recognized Kizaru's innate talent for ninjutsu, and although he knew rumors about Kizaru developing wind-release jutsu were fabricated by Danzo, his true potential was undeniable. At just 6 years old, Kizaru had already created a new bloodline limit, proving himself to be a prodigy. What? A bloodline limit passed down from the Chimera clan? Hiruzen briefly pondered the absurdity of such rumors. He knew the Chimera clan was known for their expertise in wind-release techniques, but they had no connection to any bloodline limit. What kind of ninjutsu have you created? Hiruzen asked, eager to see for himself. Kizaru didn't respond with words but instead raised his right hand. Chakra, lacking any specific attribute, gathered in his palm and rapidly compressed, causing the surrounding air to spin at high speeds. Hiruzen's eyes widened in surprise, unable to hide his shock. The power emanating from Kizaru's palm was immense, even though he had no idea of the exact principle behind it. He was certain that this was an incredibly destructive form of ninjutsu, a completely new and independent technique, not merely an extension of a bloodline limit. A monster. Kizaru was truly a monster. Looking at his disciple, Hiruzen realized how extraordinary Kizaru truly was. How far could he go? Could he possibly surpass even the legendary Senju Hashirama? Hiruzen had to leave soon after their meeting. As the Hokage, his duties were numerous, and he couldn't afford to linger. Before his departure, he observed Kizaru's demonstration of the Raise Non, praising the innovation behind it. Despite not knowing the exact training process, Hiruzen, with his extensive experience, judged the technique to be A-rank ninjutsu. He also shared valuable advice on refining the Raise Non further, suggesting Kizaru experiment with combining chakra and nature transformation to enhance its power. Kizaru couldn't help but appreciate his teacher's insight. It was clear that Hiruzen, a true expert in ninjutsu, provided not only guidance but deep understanding of the art. After discussing his suggestions, Hiruzen mentioned the individual chosen for Kizaru's upcoming graduation assessment. The candidate was Uchiha Kinsuk, a 30-year-old jonin who had been promoted 3 years ago. He was an elite Uchiha with the Shuriken and specialized in both swordsmanship and fire-release ninjutsu, with solid abilities in taijutsu and ninjutsu. The decision to select Kinsuk had come from a discussion between Hiruzen and the Uchiha clan, including Kizaru himself. However, each side had its own reasoning. Hiruzen chose Kinsuk because of his calm, rational demeanor. Even if Kizaru defeated him, Kinsuk would not cause any trouble. The Uchiha clan, on the other hand, selected Kinsuk because of his strength and level-headedness, ensuring that their honor wouldn't be tarnished by a child, even one with extraordinary abilities. The upcoming battle between Kizaru and Kinsuk was more than just a test of skill, it was a battle of influence. If Kizaru won, it would not only showcase his exceptional talent but also weaken the Uchiha clan's prestige while boosting Hiruzen's faction. If Kinsuk triumphed, the Uchiha clan would solidify their power in the village, while undermining Danzo's faction. The Uchiha clan had full confidence in their jonin's victory. Kinsuk, with his years of combat experience, would easily overpower a 6-year-old child, no matter how talented Kizaru might be. In their minds, the idea of Kizaru winning seemed impossible unless there was some form of trickery or supernatural interference. Danzo, however, wasn't concerned. He knew the full extent of Kizaru's abilities and was already planning to use the outcome of the assessment to his advantage, no matter who won. Kizaru, aware of the political maneuvering, cared little about the larger game. His motivations were personal. He wanted to challenge the Uchihas for their past treatment of his friend Yoshihiko and gain fame to speed up his own growth. For the next few months, Kizaru's routine remained unchanged. He went to school, trained diligently, and spent his free time relaxing with tea and fishing. It was a peaceful period, though outside the village, Hanzo the Salamander, leader of a Megakure, was making waves with plans that threatened the stability of the ninja world. Hanzo, now at the height of his power, was aiming to challenge the 5 great nations, seeking to position himself as the 6th Kage. The Kages, fully aware of Hanzo's intentions, had made it clear they would not allow such an audacious rise to power. Hanzo's ambitions were a direct challenge to the established order, and the 5 Kages were resolute in maintaining their dominance. During this time, Kizaru often overheard his uncle Danzo discussing 2 names, Hanzo and Minato. Danzo considered Hanzo a threat to be managed, while Minato caught his eye as someone with potential. After several months of careful observation, Danzo decided to make Minato his adopted son, securing him for the Chimera clan's future. Danzo's strategy was slow and calculated. By spending time at the training grounds, mentoring Minato, he had successfully cultivated an image as a strict but caring figure. Kizaru, understanding his uncle's motives, couldn't help but admire his cunning. Although aware of Danzo's true intentions, Kizaru supported the idea of Minato joining the Shimura clan, seeing it as beneficial for both the clan's future and the avoidance of potential tragedies.